Yeah, yeah.
Miss Lori, are you ready? Thanks, like, I know. You have to stand sideways. I'm sorry.
All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome. So I think you're all probably in the right place. There's a lot of activity going on here at this morning. So if you're here for the learning community, then yes. Yay. Yay. We have several other sites joining us from our Valley region. So I'm going to give them a chance to say hi and holler at everybody here. And then we're going to go right into our
They look like they're still talking to their folks. Can you all see the, we got Kern County, we've got
Who's Monica. Hi, Monica. How's everybody?
Hello.
Hi, Monica.
Yes.
Hello.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, can you hear us?
Absolutely. Good morning. Thank you.
Great.
All right. And then let's go to our friends in Kern. Hello, Kern.
Good morning, Lori. We're here.
Yay. Hi, Jamie. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. I think we're ready to roll.
You could drag that way up.
Old person using technology here.
Alert, alert.
And danger. All right. Everybody see that? Okay. All right. All right, good morning. Thanks again, everybody, for coming this morning. We're excited. This is some of you have been with us before for all three of our prior learning communities. This is our fourth one in the series. And today we're really excited to be exploring our last protective factor, which is going to focus on the social and emotional impact of child trauma today, and particularly as it relates to resilience and child development. So we had some introductions. We saw some other folks across our Valley region. We've got folks in Kern County, and we've got partners through Comprehensive Youth Services. My name is Lori Schumacher. I work for Center for Human Services, and Jennifer Rangel, to my right here, also works for the center. But today we are part of our Strategies 2.0 team. And I also want to introduce our technology divas over here to the right. Hello. We've got Shane and Carrie. Carrie's got the wave down. But they're no joke. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to bring all of this in such a coordinated, beautiful way and see each other and hear each other in so many different places. So thank you, technology divas. And we want to acknowledge our funder, which is the Office of Child Abuse Prevention, otherwise known as OCAP. And thanks to their funding, we're able to bring these learning community opportunities to you all today. A little bit about Strategies. I know many of you have participated in trainings that Strategies has offered, and we've been really grateful to have them in our Valley region, providing a lot of support and assistance for us all in the family strengthening field. So just a little bit about Strategy's mission. Strategies 2.0 is a catalyst for the professional skills, organizational structure, and community relationships that are necessary to mitigate the risk factors for child abuse and neglect, and importantly, to promote child, family, and community well-being. So Strategies, as many of you know, is a collaborative of 3 different agencies: the Children's Bureau of Orange County, San Diego State University, the Social Policy Institute, and then the CAP Center, the Child Abuse Prevention Center in Sacramento. So, Strategies, apart from doing things today like our learning community, Strategies also provides a lot of opportunity for growth, knowledge and education for all of us that are working with families. So they do provide training at no cost. They also provide consulting and as I mentioned today, learning communities, which is what we're all gathered to do. So how can you get connected? So far, so good. You all got connected already because you're here, which means you went on the website, you registered, you found where you needed to be. But you can also sign up on the website for the newsletter if you don't already get that. It's a great way to stay connected to what's happening throughout not just our region, but the state and other opportunities that are there. If you are interested in requesting a training, that's where you would go. They have quite an impressive menu of training opportunities, so you can check that out. And then, of course, continue to go there to register for your
If you're having trouble, you can just
Voices from beyond.
Oh, okay, good. So just a little bit about learning communities. Some of you have been already, so you know, but learning communities are really our chance to get some education, but also to learn from each other. And so, you know, I think one of the great things about it, it brings a lot of different partners in the room. So some of us working where we work, sometimes we go to training, sometimes what we're doing, we're just doing together in our agency or perhaps just in our field. But learning communities, we've got folks from schools and family strengthening organizations and nonprofits and county agencies. And so there are a lot of partners here today. And so what we are going to do is really, you know, create an environment for you to get connected and learn together. The other thing is that what we're hoping to do, especially in the afternoon, is really to take a look at what we're learning and then begin to look at how we can problem solve together across sectors. A little bit about, just a little snippet of information about outcomes. There we go. And so those will be really helpful for us later in the day, but we like to get feedback about what people are experiencing in the learning community. So this year, for example, in a survey, 84% of participants across all learning communities in the state reported that they had some sort of knowledge gain, that they learned something new, that they found some new tools to go back and use with their families, and that is really great news for us. That's great feedback. Okay, so for anybody who's a social media hound, I think I saw some people in Kern taking some selfies already this morning, maybe. Not sure, so that's awesome. So if you do that, some hashtags for you to pay attention to if you post on Instagram or Facebook. Hashtag ValleyLC, hashtag building resilience. That's awesome. All right, a little bit about today. So we are going to do a little warm up in a few minutes. I'm going to invite Jennifer to come up and get you started on that. We're just so thrilled to have Jennifer Johnson with us today, and she'll come up after our warm up and begin her presentation. We will take a half an hour break about 12:15 for lunch. We're going to have some food here, so nobody really has to go anywhere unless you feel like you need to. But it'll be short, just 30 minutes. And then when we come back, we're really going to kind of dig into what we heard together and what implications that has for us in our work and working with children and families that we see. And then we'll invite you to give us some reflection and some feedback and some evaluation on your experience today. So for those of you who are new, and as a reminder for those of you who have been here, our goal has really been to try and deepen regional knowledge of strengthening families' 5 protective factors. And the 5 protective factors are the core in supporting well-being for children and families. So a little bit about those. Parental resilience. For some of you that were with us the last time we were together, we had a parent panel, which was really an awesome way to learn more about parent stories and how parents develop resilience. So we have delved into that. Social connections, the first learning community we did, we spent a lot of time talking about parent cafes and providing some education around that as a way to get parents socially connected to each other. Knowledge of parenting and child development, we'll get a little some of that today. Concrete support in times of need, these are things that everybody needs to thrive. And in December, we had Magnolia Community Initiative here to talk about what they do in inner city Los Angeles to support children and families and to get them connected to basic needs and beyond. And then today, we will learn a lot more about social emotional competence of children, but particularly as it relates to trauma and resiliency. All right, so with that, I'm going to invite Jennifer to come up, Jennifer R., and she's going to guide us in a fun activity. Oh, I don't need to do that, okay. We're going to get Jennifer on mic.
Yeah. Just talk into the mic.
So this mic is right over there. You won't hear me here through the mic. But so welcome. Again, my name is Jennifer Rangel. We're going to do a little warm up. So what I'd like you to do is to pair up with someone that you don't know. So that may require you getting up from your table, because I know we like to sit with the people that we walk in with. So if you can go ahead and stand up and pair up with someone that you don't know, that would be great.
Good job before leaving.
So that includes our remote.
That includes our remote site.
Oh, thank you.
Nicole.
Yeah.
You're at the
Yes, here.
And just introduce yourself. Oh, yeah. And what did you learn? So your question is, what did you learn about taking care of yourself as a child? How has that changed?
Everybody see the question on the screen? This is what, oh, you just spent a few minutes talking about. Oh, okay, I got you. Even if we like click this and then this is. What did I learn? You have to take care of yourself as a child.
I learned how to, like when I was mainly in high school, like how to be more aware and mindful of time. You know, like when I was younger, like my mom would have me on the street to do everything, and now it's just kind of like programmed. Like I get up and
Learn about taking care of
That's horrible. That's the one I was looking for.
I'm the one that waits until like, oh, I can squeeze a couple more.
I learned a lot.
I don't know. I have to work at it. In high school, but I always I can understand why people would cut some. Going to jail. And then a couple of them, yeah, they taught me like, yeah.
Yeah, the drop-in center. But my programs were crazy.
Yeah, I work for Center for Human Services and we're working in collaboration with the USA. So, real college. And so she's at they want to know, you know what?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think, like, yes, yeah, I was talking to yeah, and she's like, I don't want to do that because I want to break that house.
Yeah.
Go in and it's the guy that was saying that, I was talking to him about he's like, I have families, I go,
Yeah. So, well, it's sad that even somebody that's in a position where they know experience as that. Me too. And I hear you like generally publicly like that's all I do. You know. But DJ Bubby.
even for them to be assessed with our conditions, like they have to go to some
Yeah.
That's
Well, that's why I'm like, I got more of a. Like every time you have scared of the unknown, and once they get into it, like, you know, my the clinicians that I work with, they do a parenting class. And do you want people that volunteer to take it over? I love it so much. I learned something every time. It's not what I thought it was. They're, you know, from CES, so they were scared to take in.
And I was supposed to come up with a poll question.
Especially when you're thinking about your child, like, I said, or your child.
Top of your head. They're hundreds of people right now.
We can have you go back to your seats. Hope you had some great conversations.
All right, we're going to invite all of you to come back. I trust that you all had some good conversations and got connected to somebody new that you didn't know. So thank you, Jen, for putting that together. I asked Jennifer to do clicking for me this morning because I'm really challenged to do more than one thing at once. So anyway, I just want to take a few moments and introduce our guest today, Jennifer Johnson. Jennifer is a licensed clinical social worker and a mental health therapist. And she currently provides clinical trainings and consultation at Stanislaus County Behavioral Health here. And Jennifer has also been an instructor in the Master of Social Work program at California State University Stanislaus for the last 13 years. And she's, for the last 7 years, served as a coordinator of the peer project at CSU Stanislaus, which creates prevention and education-related activities to eliminate stigma associated with mental health issues and to reduce the risk of suicide. And I have to say that, and I told Jennifer this morning, that as I've been sharing out the learning community and making sure that people knew about our opportunity today to be together, that every time I mentioned her name, people had such a positive response and have had great experience learning with Jennifer. So we're very appreciative of her. So I'm going to invite Jennifer up, and we're going to do a wardrobe change here with the mic. So you
Thank you. Carrie, I'll give you a heads up. My voice is a little bit different than Lori's, so I don't want to blow your ear out, okay? All right.
I know.
And this is for everyone else that's being recorded, so the microphone is not for you. So if I start to dip down a little bit and you can't hear me, just give me thumbs up. No, actually, that'll let me think, yeah, I'm doing okay. Just go like this. Just go like this, and I'll raise my voice. But am I okay right now? Can you hear me all right? All right, fantastic. So what we're going to do is really look at the concept of trauma. Here's what I'm hoping to do. I want to give you some basic information about how the brain changes when a child has been traumatized. When we realize how the brain changes, it affects how we engage with the child. It changes how we step to a child. It changes how we become participatory with the child. Everything we do changes the moment that we understand how the brain has been affected once there's been trauma on the scene. So the research out there says if we can educate people on these brain changes after trauma, then all of us will approach children differently. All of us will also educate others that maybe don't understand brain changes. We'll start to educate them in a soft, gentle way. And so what we'll now have is a trauma-informed approach. And we hear that term a lot, trauma-informed, right? Have you heard that a couple times? So in order to truly have a trauma-informed approach, you have to know the neuroscience behind it. You have to know what is going on with the brain after trauma has occurred. That's what I'm hoping to do. That'll be the first part. And then on the second part, I'm going to roll into some direct interventions. Some interventions that you could actually do with a child that is struggling, or interventions that you would share out with families that you work with. So if you're working at a crisis shelter and you see some family chaos and conflict kind of pop up, you're going to be in there. You're going to be able to get in there and kind of educate and do some of these interventions. If you're at a family resource center, you're going to be able to educate a parent that's coming in and really struggling with some stuff that's going on at home, not understanding why their kids are acting the way they're acting, or not understanding why they are being so reactive. And so you're going to be able to educate them as well. If you're working in a school setting, you're going to be able to get in there and educate some of the teachers that are starting to question, how come I'm not relating to this child? Or how come this child is pushing my buttons? Or how come I'm contemplating a new career, right? So you're going to actually be able to get in there and you're going to be able to educate that teacher really about what's happening behind the scenes, how the brain is changed after trauma occurs. And so I'm hoping that you're going to leave here with some of those interventions today and kind of roll those out, not only for yourself, not only for your own family, because trauma permeates. We all have been affected by trauma in one way or another. It might not have been direct, but there is some type of indirect trauma that affects all of us at one time or another. So that's what we're going to do today. Some neuroscience on the front end and some clear, simple interventions on the back end. Does that sound all right? All right, fantastic. I tend to move a lot, so if I make anybody seasick in Merced or Kern County or Fresno, let me know and I'll slow down my movement and whatnot. So we're just going to hit it from here. We're good? All right. Let's start off with first explaining what a neurotypical brain looks like. A neurotypical brain.
So when I mention the word neurotypical, what I'm really talking about is a brain that has not been modified or altered by trauma. It is where the brain fires and wires the way it was intended to fire and wire. All the templates are playing out the way it was originally designed. That's a neurotypical, a non-traumatized child. So with the neurotypical child, here's what happens. When they see this look, right, this bright, smiling, accepting, nourishing look, or they see this, right, a supportive individual, a teacher or a mentor or someone of an authority figure, letting them know that everything's okay. And again, I know that signs mean different things in different places, so when you travel, be careful. This means something else in other countries, so please be very careful. But in this slide, what is happening is the teacher is letting the child know, you did a great job, everything's okay, well done, well done. So in a neurotypical child, when they see things like this, facial expressions that show praise and acceptance, gestures that show praise and acceptance, even verbal phrases that allow a child to know, wow, I did well, or I'm accepted, or everything's okay. A neurotypical child will all of a sudden have some firing in the brain, and will start to release chemicals, specific chemicals. And what these chemicals do is they create a desire to do the same behavior over again that got the praise. So whatever the praise was given, if the praise was, hey, you got all your paper done in time, you got your homework done in time, well done, I like how you did that, good job. Then at that moment, you're gonna have this chemical release. And what's gonna happen is that that child is gonna go, how can I get that chemical release again in the future? How can I get that again because I like how it feels? If you have someone leaning over you and smiling and not a creepy smile, right? A really nourishing and supportive smile, then that child at that moment is going to be flooded with chemicals, and they're going to wonder, how can I do similar behavior and get this again? They're going to want this again. But let's look at the specific chemicals that actually get released. It's a 3-love drug combination, by the way. 3-love drug combination is serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. That's your 3-love drug combination. Every chemical has a calling card. It leaves behind a cognitive message. And they're all different, but they play really nice together. So let's look at the messages that gets left behind. So serotonin, it really affects your mood. But here's the calling card that gets left behind when you have a rush of serotonin. The calling card or the cognitive message that gets left behind is one that, hey, tomorrow will be okay. You know, today's a little bit rough, but tomorrow's going to be all right. It gives a calling card of hope, which is why individuals who struggle with serotonin uptake, struggle with serotonin levels, often also struggle with elements of depression. Serotonin and depression are actually linked. And so when appropriate serotonin is released in the body, it gives you that feeling that, yeah, you know, today's going to be all right, or maybe today wasn't all right, but tomorrow might be okay, and the next day might be okay, and the next week might be okay. Do you see how that differs from someone that struggles with depression? Someone who struggles with depression does not see today as okay, does not have hope that tomorrow will be okay, does not have hope that next week will be any better, does not have hope that the future can improve. And so when we don't have enough serotonin on the scene, it leaves us with this lack of hope and really concern about what tomorrow brings. But when we do have serotonin on the scene, it gives us the opposite feeling. Right? So that's one chemical that gets released whenever a child is praised. That chemical that gets released is that serotonin. It enhances the mood, and it allows them to know things are going to be all right. So it's a beautiful chemical on its own. Would you agree? All right. Then we have our second chemical release. So when a child is praised in any way, they get a little flush of dopamine. And dopamine is a phenomenal chemical. It actually leaves us with this feeling of happiness and a true desire of wanting more. Whatever it was that got us to this level of happiness with this dopamine, they want to do it again. So on a side note, just to put it in perspective, dopamine is related to the reward pleasure pathway. That's why every form of addiction is connected to dopamine. Every form of addiction, rather it be substance misuse, whether it be shopping addiction, porn addiction, social media addiction, gambling addiction, all behavioral addictions as well as substances are all linked to dopamine. Because when an individual does something that feels good, it sends off those dopamine reward pleasure pathways. But what happens is that the drug that they're taking or the behavior they're engaging in actually enhances it and spits out a lot more dopamine than ever expected. And one more side note, just to put it in perspective with kids, adolescents have the most dopamine circuitry ever that they will have in their lives, more than when they were a child, more than they were an adult. And so during adolescence, that's why addiction is such a tenuous and risky situation. That's why we want children to delay if we can in any way. If we can get an adolescent to delay experimentation with drugs, that would be great, so that we have time for some of the dopamine system to lessen itself. But during adolescence, you have the most dopamine that you will ever have in your entire life, enhancing the chances of addiction issues. So that's kind of the negative element of dopamine. But now back to the positive element of dopamine. Dopamine, once released, it leaves the calling card and the cognitive message that you're happy and you feel good and you want more of this. You want to revisit this state of happiness, right? We could all appreciate some good dopamine. Would you agree? Good, good. So when a child's getting that praise, they get that serotonin and that dopamine. Here's the final love drug that they get released, oxytocin. It's actually referred to in the literature as the hug drug. So oxytocin, which is different than oxycodone. I'm not talking about oxycodone. So Fresno, Merced, and Kern, different topic. So oxytocin is a natural chemical that is released in the body. And it actually leaves this calling card. It's the most beautiful calling card out there. It leaves the message that the child is lovable and can give love. That's beautiful, right? It's absolutely beautiful. So when oxytocin rushes through the body, that is the cognitive message or the calling card that's left behind. And to put it in perspective, here's what we know. Our children that are in the system, our children that have been removed and are in foster care, what we actually realize is that they rate very low in oxytocin levels. Can you imagine how difficult it would be to maneuver and navigate through life, not really knowing if you're lovable and you can give love? Does that make sense? Can you feel kind of the weight of that? And it doesn't mean it cannot be addressed and can't be attended to. It can through healing, through what we call neural replacement activities, where they are showered with activities that counter the way they think about themselves, the way they think about the world, the way they think about others. So when neural activities happen, it helps replenish that and can allow oxytocin to come back on the scene and be the great chemical reaction that it was meant to be. So oxytocin is your hug drug, leaving you with the message that you can give love and you can receive love, right? So now let's put it all into perspective. If you have a child and they're being praised for something that they're doing, you know, little Johnny is lined up at the playground the way he was supposed to. He helped put away the tether balls, and now he's in line waiting for lunch, and you have a paraprofessional just walk by and say, Johnny, well done. At that moment, what has happened is you've released a little serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin, right? At that moment, you have released that love-drug combination. The research shows us that Johnny's going to have a better chance at succeeding at all that he tackles that day. And then if he has another go the next day, right, he does something else. He's in class, and it turns out a classmate is struggling with something, and Johnny knew the answer. And so Johnny leans over and says, you know, hey, Juanita, here's how you do it. Here's how you do the math. It goes like this, right? And then at that time, Juanita looks up and says, you know what, thanks. This was really helpful. And at the same time, the teacher looks across the room and says, Johnny, thank you for helping Juanita. That was wonderful. At that moment, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin released in Johnny's body once again. And the research indicates whatever he tackles, he's going to have a higher rate of success that day because he has some oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. What we want for our children is to have a consistent dosage of these chemicals so that they have a higher rate of success and so that they feel they can get out there and tackle and handle life, whatever stressors are thrown at them. So that's just a little bit about the chemicals, right, and all the calling cards. Were you able to hear it and kind of let it settle in? Okay, good, good. So here's what I'd like to do. Adult learning theory says, even though we haven't talked much, I've kind of thrown a lot at you. So adult learning theory says, if you have approximately 5 minutes to just chat about it really quickly, it will solidify and all the information I just shared will anchor in. So what I wanted to do is I want you to talk about it, but I want you to talk about it in this way. At your table, pretend that you're educating either a teacher on this concept of the 3 love-drug combination, or you're educating a foster family, right? A foster parent who has come to you and said, hey, you know, my children were so different than this foster child in front of me. What could be going on, right? I want you just to explain that in neurotypical children, when they are praised, these 3 love drugs come out to play. If a child has been traumatized, these 3 love drugs do not come out to play at this high rate. So what I want you to do is just educate the parent or the teacher or someone in the community on what these 3 love drugs are and how they come out to play when a child is praised. That is it. We'll do 5 minutes of that and then allow that to anchor in. Okay? All right. Thank you.
I do know that I want to have this conversation with you.
No retirement.
No retirement for you.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, I can't retire.
But she doesn't like travel.
Yeah. You know, I only was 4 years for that.
Then the rest of me is like this. And like, I'm really like another person. Like when I present, it's different.
Like we go up to her, she's and we're on the road trip and I promise. And so we would, and then hello everybody. We're here to present you. Then we go back together. But we had each other.
Having that,
Yeah, it was a pretty good to have such a supportive.
knowing that you're not alone in that.
And it was okay to be emotional. Yeah, yes. And it's a technology that now I use. So grateful.
I thought you also sound really smart and across the party, you know,
Yeah.
And I like tried to pass that on. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, he needs to know this because one of our children. Yeah. I need to tell that actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of just like.
And you can kind of walk around and real quick, see.
Yes.
Maybe just you know,
Yes.
I made sure it's going out, but it's like, you realize.
I asked her what God was in that, right? I said, both sides. Online. Normally, that's what well, I shared, I could see that they're talking. Online
Yeah. You know, I've never given birth, but I actually all of a sudden, you know, when I first dropped it, and then like I was there and I got there.
Because I was like, I felt really good about myself in that incident. And I was like, oh, that's probably what it was. Yeah. Well, that's pretty significant. Yeah, that was like frustrating.
Having the right reaction.
All right, we'll go ahead and come back together. So what we'll do is we'll just have some of those small breaks where you have a chance to kind of talk about what was presented. So again, my hope is that you're understanding what happens in a neurotypical brain. In a neurotypical brain, you get these rush of chemicals, and it does indeed make life seem more achievable, more doable. You have a higher chance of recovering from upsets and stressors. And so what we're going to look at now is how that differs. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the neuroscience about how that differs with a brain that has been traumatized, a non-neurotypical brain, a non-neurotypical brain. Because it hinders these chemicals. So keep in mind these chemicals, and then I'm going to talk to you about what other chemicals come on the scene and almost eat these chemicals up, allowing them not to have the most bang for their buck as they were originally intended. So here we go. You did that activity? So when I talk about trauma, I really want people to realize that the clinical literature has a rather large umbrella explaining trauma. And so I'm going to help talk a little bit about toxic stress, but also a little bit about trauma. But just in general, know that this large umbrella of trauma can include a number of things. So this is from the literature. It can include child maltreatment. Those of you, you work in certain areas, you're aware, you see that all day long. The individuals that come to your shelters, the individuals that might be coming to your resource center, the individuals that you're serving at school, you are aware there is some maltreatment on the scene. It might not have yet been disclosed, it might not yet be fully understood, but you can tell that there is some type of maltreatment, some type of struggle going on. It can include witnessing domestic violence, exposure to community violence, lots of new research. Just taking a look at how living in a community that is rather chaotic and dangerous, where you often have concerns of your own ability to stay alive, your own ability to connect with others, that community violence can begin to change the brain structure as well. CDC is doing an enormous amount of research on this and has been doing an enormous amount of research on this for years. Being a victim of bullying. So again, being a victim, walking into a school setting and being targeted consistently over and over and over again can change the brain structure as well. Other areas of trauma, being involved in a serious accident, fire, disaster, medical trauma, sudden loss of a loved one. So all of these things constitute trauma. It doesn't necessarily mean it will have a traumatizing effect on everyone, because there are sometimes those protective factors, and that's what you've been learning about with the work that's been done here. There are a number of protective factors that are in place that serve as a buffer, that can serve as a buffer and allow the traumatizing effects not to be so significant, not to be so detrimental. But in the literature, it still accumulates as trauma, it still counts as trauma. So these are just some general examples for trauma that I list up here. Now let's kind of put it in perspective about stress, because sometimes what happens when someone goes to a trauma-informed training, when they go out and they see children under stress, they start to label that as trauma. And we want to be very careful about that. We want to separate it out. It doesn't mean that stress doesn't have a negative effect. Stress can have a negative effect, but in reality, stress can also have a positive effect, okay? So we want to be careful. We don't want to mislabel things because it will start to change how we engage, and it will start to cause us to interrupt versus intervene. And some things, we want to make sure we're doing a proper intervention versus interrupting a natural, normal experience. So, for instance, meeting new people. When it's time for a child to go and meet new people, that's going to be rather stressful. Those of you that have had children or been around children, can you remember the times where you had to peel the kid off your leg, right, and then get them to go into the classroom for the first time? I personally think it was harder for me than it was for my children, right? But that's normal, healthy stress. At that time, there is some cortisol release. Cortisol is a stress hormone that we're going to talk about in a moment. But there is a stress release at that moment, but not to the detrimental stage of when it's toxic stress. And so don't interrupt things that are normal and natural that cause stress, such as your high schooler panicking about a test. Allow that cortisol to flood through the body and then teach them some coping skills, teach them some calming skills, but don't interrupt and save them from that test, right? Don't go and take it for them. Don't pay another person to take it for them. right? And don't pay to get them into college, please. So, all right. So allow them to experience those letdowns. Allow them to experience that stress. That's normal, healthy stress. And the cortisol level is appropriate for those normal, healthy stresses. And so that's what we call positive stress. So don't interrupt, right? Be helpful, be supportive, be the protective factor, right? Which is where you're going to help them process afterwards. You're going to help that young adult process that they did not get accepted into the place they wanted to go. You're going to help that young child realize that they didn't get enough points in the classroom to go on the field trip. You're going to help them handle that. You're going to be that protective factor, help them process that. So that's positive stress. And then next you have what we consider tolerable stress. Tolerable stress. And so the example that's given here is death in the family. So death in the family can be located in tolerable stress only if you have a buffer support system that is helping you handle that death. Death in the family can move over here to toxic stress the moment you do not have that support system and those buffer people in your life to help you handle that loss, to help you transition from who you were today when that person was alive to who you are now that that person is no longer alive and they're no longer with you. And so if you have that buffer person, that protective factor, then it becomes tolerable stress. Tolerable stress. If you have someone that you can completely cry and break down with and be a total hot mess with, that is a buffer experience. It then places the death of a family member in tolerable stress so that you can recover and heal from it. Does that make sense? But if you don't have that, please know that it will bump up to toxic stress. So here we have over here toxic stress. So they gave examples: parental addiction, abuse, neglect. But again, we just had a slide that talked about a lot of them. So toxic stress has one factor that remains the same. There is not a supportive person around to help through that. There is not any protective factor. There are not any protective factors on the scene. There are not that buffer experience happening. Because some of you, you may have been raised around parental addiction. You may have experienced your own form of abuse. You may have experienced years of neglect. So if you had buffer and protective experiences, then what happens, it remains toxic stress, but you are able to tolerate it, recover, and heal from it. So it no longer has the ramifications or the consequences of toxic stress. It starts to scoot over into the tolerable area. Does that make sense? So we just want to be able to put all that in perspective. And of course, things that are in the toxic stress, that begins to match the trauma definition in the literature, right? Here's a nice little cheat sheet. I put this in there. I feel that this is a soft, gentle cheat sheet that you can share out with parents and teachers. Teachers really like this. It helps them understand what they're looking at when they're looking out into the classroom of 32 students with the awareness they have a number of them that have been traumatized. So you have your positive, brief increases in heart rate, mild elevations in stress hormone levels, right, specifically cortisol. Then down here you have that tolerable one. So it's a serious situation. Temporary stress response buffered by supportive elements, by protective elements, okay? But then down here, prolonged, consistent dousing of stress hormones without any buffer experiences, without any protective factors, okay? So it's a nice little cheat sheet just to help separate it out. When I share it with foster families, by the way, here's how I use it. I let them know that the years this child may have been somewhere else, they have been doused with toxic stress. But you see, the key is to develop positive relations. And that's really what this foster agency or this foster family's goal is to develop foster healthy relations. So when you're working with that resource parent, which we used to call foster parents, when you work with them, you want to be able to help them identify what is the best and most successful way that I can develop positive relations so I am a protective factor, so that I can start to eliminate the toxic stress that's been doused on this child. Does that make sense? You're good? All right. So those are just kind of nice little cheat sheets for you. And they have access to these slides, correct?
We'll be sending all those out to everybody.
Okay, so all those slides will be coming to you. And please use anything that you see fit. Just don't change stats, don't change research, but use any of that. The presentation is actually created so that you could pull a slide and have it in a meeting that you're having with a teacher or school or a mentor or a family member. And so please, they're yours to use from here on out. Use them as you see fit. So when we kind of look out in the world and we're wondering, well, how many people fit under this title of trauma? Right? How many people fit under the umbrella of trauma? It's 6 out of 10 according to the CDC, right? So how many of you were surprised at that? 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10. Anybody surprised?
Nobody in this room.
Right. All right. So even though we weren't in the midst of some of the most traumatized communities and the most traumatized families, it is still shocking to know 6 out of 10, right? 6 out of 10. So really what that means is you should just be doing trauma-informed practices all the time. Always assume that there is someone traumatized in the audience. Always assume there's someone traumatized in your group. Always assume there's someone traumatized in your classroom. And here's a really neat fact. If you're doing trauma-informed practices, you will cause no harm to the neurotypical non-traumatized child. You will absolutely cause no harm. As a matter of fact, the research is pointing out that if you do trauma-informed practices, you actually are planting social and emotional learning skills. Social and emotional learning skills. So it's a win-win for everybody, right? So when you're out in society, act like everyone's been traumatized. Yeah, and it will make you approach with more gentle kindness and understanding. And when I say out in the community, I mean everywhere. You know, the waiter comes up to you and isn't as pleasant as you were hoping that day. Realize there may be some trauma on the scenes that we have no idea. And so respond, don't react. Respond in a kind and gentle way. You may actually be helping lower his cortisol and maybe giving him his first dose of oxytocin that he's had for a while, right? So just act as if 6 out of 10 have been traumatized, and here's why. Because 6 out of 10 have been traumatized. Make sense? We're okay with that? All right, good, good. So here's kind of the opposite chemicals. I'm going to talk about 2 chemical reactions that happen when an individual is traumatized. There's this release of cortisol, significant release in cortisol, and a significant release in adrenaline. And so I'm 49 years old, so I'm a little bit older than a lot of people in the room. But do y'all remember Pac-Man? Do you remember Pac-Man game? Yes. Oh, good, good. Okay. So cortisol and adrenaline are much like Pac-Man. And what they do is they dissipate the experience or the effect of oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. So does that kind of help? So you get too much cortisol and too much adrenaline on the scene, you don't get your bang for your buck with the love drugs that we just talked about, which is why traumatized kids don't always feel the same effect when someone praises them. You might have to praise them 38 times in 1 minute for them to go, oh, I'm feeling a little something now, right? So be aware. Just because they don't respond in the way that you would want after you gave praise, it might mean you have not met the threshold of them experience all the benefits from your praise. So instead, double time it, right? Pick some pep up in your step and do a little bit more praise. When you see something, praise it. When it's something to be praiseworthy of, then praise it. So we can get the cortisol and adrenaline levels lower and the love drugs higher. So when we get this flush of cortisol and adrenaline on the scene, it creates something that's called dormant brain in the clinical literature. And dormant brain really leaves you feeling all these elements. You typically get stuck in survival mode, which is the opposite of learning mode, by the way. You can either be in survival mode or you can be in learning mode. When I tell that to teachers, mind blown. You either be in survival mode or be in learning mode. Can't be in the same place at one time. Because, by the way, in learning mode, you achieve what's called a state of calm attentiveness. State of calm attentiveness. If you're in survival mode, you can never achieve a state of calm attentiveness. But in order to take in learning what is being taught to you and get the learning blocks going in your brain, you have to be in a state of calm attentiveness or attentive calmness. It's interchanged in the literature. And you can only receive that, you can only be in that state when things are meshing perfectly and there is no toxic stress in the situation, there is no overflow of adrenaline and cortisol on the scene. Does that make sense? So you got two choices, survival mode or learning mode, right? You typically in the dormant brain, you visit anger and rage a lot easier, and here's why. You have elements of the brain that are communicating with each other, and I'll describe the brain in detail in a moment. But you have the limbic system communicating with the survival system. And then those two things connect. It really is about anger and rage. It's the easiest emotions to draw up. Anger and rage are also, they're secondary emotions. They're never primary emotions. Primary emotions are what happens first, what comes first. Anger and rage are secondary. It's what happens after. So once we realize that, if we can get in and help a child identify their primary emotions, what you're going to have is a kid that can calm down a lot quicker and can leave survival brain and go into learning brain. Despair and depression. So these are often the leftovers because there isn't the effects of all the chemicals being released. And so you often have this, I'm not doing good today and I'm probably not going to do good tomorrow. Right? This year has been awful, so the future is probably going to be awful as well. And so you often have a visiting of despair and depression. And then if anybody wants to escape the first two things I talked about, if you're wanting to escape anger and rage, if you're wanting to escape despair and depression, then you entertain substance misuse, right? You entertain that, right? All it takes is one other 14-year-old to walk up to you and say, hey, man, your life sucks. I can see it from this far, right? And then the kid goes, yeah, you know, my life does suck. And then all it takes is that one 14-year-old to say, hey, I got something that helps. Whatever that something is, right? It could be a behavioral addiction. It could be self-harm, right? Let me introduce this to you. It could be a disordered eating practice. Let me introduce purging to you. Then I feel so much better when I do that. Let me introduce marijuana to you. I feel so much better when I do that. Let me introduce alcohol to you. I feel so much better when I do that. Let me introduce these pills I found in the medicine cabinet. I feel so much better when I do that. So if you're wanting to escape what's left behind in the dormant brain, addiction is very enticing, right? Very enticing. It only takes one person to make the suggestion, try this, right? I can tell you're hurting, so try this, it'll help you forget it. So in the dormant brain, it's easier to slip into addiction. And then stagnant thought and limited energy flow. Really what that's talking about is the different areas of the brain are meant to communicate. They're meant to fire together and make sense out of things. And they fire at rates that are unbelievable, right? Getting the synapses to shoot messages across different parts of the brain and attempts to make sense out of what's happening in the outside world. But what we know is when you're in dormant brain, we actually see less firing, less wiring in all of these creative parts of the brain, all in the brain, the problem-solving parts of the brain. We see no firing or very limited firing going on there. And so what we know is there's limited flow amongst all the regions of the brain, and you become very stagnant, which is why traumatized children will often do the same behavior over and over and over again. They become stagnant and unwilling and unable, I should say unable, I'm sorry, I strike the unwilling piece, unable to brainstorm and problem solve. Is there an alternative way to be doing something? Is there something else I should be doing? Should I try this? Should I try a different approach? They become very stagnant and do the same thing over and over and over again. And that's related back to the lack of flow that allows the different communication aspects to happen across the brain. Does that make sense? So this is dormant brain. And we see dormant brain when you have a surge of adrenaline and cortisol on the scene. So with trauma, we know that we get that push of cortisol, we get that push of adrenaline, and it can kick you into dormant brain. But let's break it down just a little bit more, just so we understand the two different aspects. So when cortisol hits the brain, it's responsible for doing this. It can actually block the hippocampus. I don't want you to worry too much about that. Just know that in the hippocampus, that's where you hold your memories. So when a child is being traumatized, right, cortisol floods the system. It actually shuts down the hippocampus. That's why trauma memories are so hard to make sense out of. right? Because you didn't remember them in a full-length film. You didn't remember them scene by scene by scene. It's really rather scattered. Normal memories go into the hippocampus, by the way. When you're not being traumatized and you're learning how to read, it goes into the hippocampus, becomes a learning block. When you're having a great time with your family and you're being nourished, you kind of remember that too. That's why you can go into the hippocampus, draw out that memory and think about it when you're having a rough day. Trauma memories don't make it into the hippocampus, which is also why we experience flashbacks, because they're not in a secure place where they're supposed to be. Memories are meant to be in the hippocampus. So what we know is that cortisol shuts down that hippocampus, doesn't allow the trauma memory to go there. Cortisol actually works as a neurotoxin. So when it spreads over the brain, it not only causes damage to what has already grown, but it causes growth to not take place. So that's two different aspects. When cortisol floods over the brain, once again, it's like a toxic spread. So some areas of the brain that have been growing are firing and are connecting with each other. If there's enough cortisol consistently doused on that brain, it will destroy that connection that has been made. If the brain was just getting ready to head into a growth period, just right, because developmental ages and stages, everyone remember that? It's a whole separate class, right? Developmental ages and stages. If a brain is getting ready to head into a developmental period where it's going to start having pieces of the brain communicate with each other, if there's cortisol from trauma on the scene, it will inhibit that growth. It will inhibit that growth. So we've got one where it destroys growth that's already been had, and we have one where it inhibits growth that is yet to be had. You see how damaging cortisol from trauma can be? Good, good. Which, by the way, this explains why sometimes you can have a child that, a young child, let's say, that has developed language, right? And so they're beginning to speak, and then trauma enters their life and creates lots of havoc and lots of chaos, and then all of a sudden they've regressed, and we no longer see the speech that they once had. Or you have a child who is just entering into speech and language development, and then trauma entered their life, and now that's inhibited. Now they are becoming behind the time period in which they would be learning language and speech. Does that make sense? All right, good, good. So cortisol, it is good up to a point, right? Up to a point in that your normal positive stress. When cortisol is released, by the way, in the positive aspect, it gives you that little push that you can succeed, you can run a little bit further, you can do better on the test. So when it's positive and it's up to a point, cortisol is actually good. It makes us sometimes a little giddy, sometimes a little nervous. Cortisol is actually released when we first fall in love, right? And it creates a little butterfly feeling. Some of you thought it was gas, but it wasn't. It was love, right? It was just that little love drug mix, but a cortisol was released in there as well. So again, cortisol up to a degree is quite fine. But then when you pass the threshold, it becomes very dangerous and destroys quite a bit. And that's when trauma is involved. It's dousing out too much cortisol. Okay, we all right? All right, good. Adrenaline. So the second component of adrenaline, when it rushes the brain, what it actually does is it starts to shut down how memory is stored. Now, this is a rather heavy slide. It's one of those slides for you to be able to look back over and over and over again. Here's what I want you to take away from it. When adrenaline is released, it keeps you from having explicit memory. Explicit memory, by the way, is your learning blocks. It's academia. It's all the things that you learn how to do, how to ride a bike, how to read a book, how to play a sport, how to do math. That's explicit memory. And so when adrenaline is released, it doesn't really allow the explicit memory to take place, but here's what it does. It allows implicit memory to step up. And implicit memory, these are not stored in truly understandable ways. Implicit memory is actually laid down in 4 ways. We're going to look at all 4 of them in a moment. But it's this memory that can revisit at different times. That's implicit memory. Not about learning, but about remembering and recalling how something felt, how it allowed you to change, how it allowed you to be fearful, whatnot. So implicit memory. So that's what's active when we have adrenaline on the scene. So here are the 4 ways in which implicit memory lays out. It's directly tied to trauma. So one is perceptual memory, which is an implicit form of memory. Perceptual memory is when you start to perceive that caused you harm, you perceive it in this kind of monstrous way, this larger than life way. So for instance, let's use an example of a dog. All of us have a friend that was bitten by a dog as a kid, right? We all know someone. And so you're out with your friend now, and they're an adult, and you're walking down the street, and this little teeny dog, it's not even like a whole dog, it's a half a dog, that's how small the dog is. It's like this little teeny dog, and it's so cute, and it's so fluffy, and your friend goes ballistic, Pshoo, right? They are over the fence, a mile away, screaming and running, whatnot. What they're experiencing is implicit perceptual memory. They perceive all dogs now as monstrous and larger than life because of the time in which they were bit by a dog as a child, right? And so perceptual memory is really looking out at the world, and that which hurt you is so much bigger and larger than it once was. So in this analogy, you know that when I'm talking about children in trauma, they're not harmed by dogs. They're harmed by people. And so now their perceptual memory is that all you people are potential perpetrators and offenders. Does that make sense? So now when you have a child going into a foster home, they don't see foster mom and pop, right? They don't see foster parents. They see foster perp, foster offender. When a child walks into a school setting in a classroom and sees his paraprofessional, his classroom aide, his teacher, his principal, his vice principal, and they're all there, right? They're not seen as these loving, helping people in their life. They're seen as possible perpetrators and possible offenders, because perceptual memory has them perceiving all adults as something monstrous and harmful. It's related back to their early trauma. Does that make sense? So that's perceptual memory. Our next one is emotional memory. So the emotions that were evoked during the trauma, during the time in which the child was traumatized, those emotions actually get embedded, and you have emotional memory. And remember, these 4 memories that I'm going to run by you, they all can visit alone or together. Alone or together. And by the way, they can be triggered, but they need not be triggered, right? Because implicit memory can simply visit because it's 9:37, because it's 10:02, right? So you do not need, it's a myth that you need to trigger up your 4 implicit memories. They can visit at any given time. I'll share with you how that makes sense in a moment. So with emotional memory, the emotions that were evoked during the trauma, they get packed and then they revisit. So the emotional memory, what would be some of the emotional memories during a trauma? What are some of the emotions that are evoked? Fear, complete fear. Terror, I would even buddy up with terror, right? What else? Anxiety, pain. What else? Hopelessness, despair, distrust, disgust, shame, all of that, right? So again, with implicit memory, emotional memory gets packed and it unfolds, it unpacks on you at any given time. So that's your emotional memory. Procedural memory. Now this is the most difficult. Procedural memory is how you remember action, doing action. So procedural memory from trauma is the realization that you tried to run and could not run, that you tried to hit and swing and you could not hit and swing, that you tried to scream, but your mouth was open and no voice came out. You tried to yell for help and nothing came out. Procedural memory, the actions that were unable to be done, that you're accustomed to being done at any other time. But during trauma, the inability to run and hit and smack and get out and roll over and get away and to scream, procedural memory, that gets trapped. And it's trapped with this sense of betrayal. How did my body betray me? Because I know how to scream, I know how to run, I know how to kick, I know how to hit. Why during that trauma did it not work? So procedural memory, the memory that you could not do an action that you know how to do, right? So this is the most difficult one to treat later on in treatment, by the way, because there is a sense of, here's what I often hear from clients that are adults that are recovering from some type of trauma in childhood. I often hear them say these words: I should have screamed a little louder. Why didn't I hit? I remember laying there, Jen, I didn't hit. Why didn't I kick? I had time to run. Why didn't I run? Right? And so we have to be able to walk through what happens to the brain and the body when you're being flooded with these chemicals. And I'll show you how you go into that paralyzed state in just a moment. But what I want you to know is that procedural memory is the remembering of, the remembrance of inability to evoke action, despite the fact you know how to do that action. Make sense? Bodily sensation memory. So remember the example with the dog? So bodily sensation memory is actually how your body recalls that, right? So if the person got bit by the dog, here's some of the bodily sensation memory. They can remember some of the nipping where the flesh was just scraped. Then they can actually remember how the teeth sunk in, and they can feel the breaking of the skin, and they can feel the pulling of the teeth on their leg. So that's bodily sensation memory. And so once again, not to play it out, but with trauma, we're not talking about a dog biting a child, right? So bodily sensation memory, or your body remembering what was happening to it, right? What was happening to it. So ripping of the flesh, breaking of the bones, whatever was occurring, your bodily sensation memory has locked that in. So these 4 areas, here's why it's important to know this. They can revisit at any time. They don't have to be triggered. They can be triggered, but they don't have to be triggered. They can revisit at any time, and they can revisit together or individually. So here's what that means. If you are working with little Johnny here, right? So we have John here. He's 12 years old. He's in math class, right? He's in math class. He's doing all right. And then out of nowhere, 10:02, he can actually feel the breaking of bones. And he wants to know, why is this happening to me? I'm in math class. There's no danger. There is no harm, right? Or let's change it up. Here we have Sally, and Sally is in reading class, and all is going well, right? She's not been triggered, but all of a sudden for her at 9:37, she has this overwhelming feeling that her body is going to betray her and not be there for her when she needs, that she will not have the ability to protect herself. She will not have the ability to get help when needed. And she's in reading class, and she is overwhelmed with this mere thought, my body is going to betray me. So do you see how disruptive that could be? And it's not that they raise their hand. Does Johnny raise his hand and say, I believe at this moment I'm either having a procedural memory issue, right? That's not what's happening. Instead, they want to leave that state. And the number one way to leave a state that you don't like, right, the number one is to create chaos. Because all I have to do is I know you really like your pencil. I saw you brought it in. I'm going to steal it, because then you're going to start yelling at me, and I'd rather you yell at me all day long as opposed to me trying to figure out, why do my bones feel like they're breaking? Why do I feel like my body's going to betray, right? And then you're my teacher, right? And I know you hate the F word, so I'm going to drop it 3 times in 1 minute flat. Then you're going to be all over me, yelling at me, getting me to the principal's office. I'm going to handle this all day long, because I'd rather do this than be lost in a thought that's about all my emotions. And I don't know why I'm feeling terror or fear or pain. I don't know why I'm feeling this. But now I don't have to, because I have the biggest distractor, because my teacher's yelling at me, right? She's sending me to the principal's office. And I'm like, yes, because now I get to leave the movie theater of everything that's playing out in my brain. Does that make sense? All right. So when we resolve ourselves to the fact that your perceptual memories can be triggered, or they can revisit on their own, when you resolve yourself to that, then you start to give a little bit of space on how you interpret children's behaviors, right? How you interpret children's behaviors. And so you're going to walk in more gently, more calmer. You're actually going to assist in de-escalating the situation, as opposed to reacting, right? And yelling, give so-and-so our pencil back. What are you doing? Keep your hands to yourself, right? So you're going to recognize this could just be the big D, big distractor. And so you're going to approach differently. So just knowing about how implicit memory works changes how we're going to approach someone that we see behaving in a way we don't like, and then we're not appreciative of. Can you make that connection? We all right? Okay, good. So let's go to kind of this image of the brain. Not kind of, we're there. Let's really go to this image of the brain. What I want you to know is that when we see those reactions in kids, it interferes with how the brain is supposed to communicate with itself, right? The brain has very distinct ways in which it should be communicating. So in a neurotypical child, a non-traumatized child's brain, it's supposed to be communicating like this. from the thalamus, up here to the cortex, then to the amygdala. That's how a neurotypical brain processes. Thalamus to cortex to amygdala. So the thalamus takes things from the outside world. What you see, what you smell, what you taste, what you hear, what you experience, everything that's going on, it comes in through the thalamus first. And so this thalamus has this ball of information, right? And in a neurotypical brain, it shoots it up to the cortex. And the cortex then looks at this ball of information, and the cortex is your smart part of your brain, your smart part of your brain. So it looks at this new ball of information that just came in through the thalamus, and it fact checks it. It goes, this is true, keep it, this is not, and it injects with more facts, right? So the cortex actually makes it a smarter ball of information than it was when it first came in. That's what you get from the cortex. A layover and a stopover at the cortex is needed and appreciated. So now the cortex makes it a smart ball of information, and it says it's done with it, and then it tosses it down here to the amygdala. And the amygdala is responsible for how you emotionally react to information that comes to it, how you emotionally respond, how you emotionally react. So this ball of information comes down here to the amygdala, and the amygdala has this, whoa, we got a ball of information, we need to move quickly. Or, there's no concern here, there's no worry, we're good, right? So the amygdala has the ability to set off the alarm system in your brain telling you to react and fight for your life and whatnot. But if a ball of information comes down and there's nothing to be fearful of, it will tell you carry on, no worry here. So that's how it works in a neurotypical brain. 3-point, make sense? Okay, in a brain that has been traumatized, in a brain that has struggled consistently with distress, chronic distress, traumatizing experiences, what happens is the cortex goes offline. The cortex goes offline. And so now you have communication from the thalamus to the amygdala more often than not. This thalamus to the amygdala, this is your survival pathway. It should only be used when your life is in threat of ending, right? So now it's communicating thalamus to amygdala. It doesn't get any cortex information. So what happens is the amygdala, the alarm system gets set off rather easily. So here's an example of what it would look like. Let's say we have a little Johnny, and he loves basketball, and he's outside. He shows up at school early. So he's outside, he's playing basketball. Bell rings, and little Johnny has not been traumatized. Let's go here. No trauma, no consistent distress. So his brain wires and fires as it should. So he's out there, he's shooting hoops early in the morning. The bell rings, everyone runs off and scatters the class. He's still shooting hoops. Principal comes out, Mrs. Olveras comes out and says, hey, Johnny, get to class, put some pep in your step. The bell rang, come on, hustle, 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 hustle. So that information comes in through the thalamus. He has not been traumatized in the past, so he processes quite well. Comes in through the thalamus. Everything Mrs. Alvarez says goes right up here to the cortex. The cortex takes this ball of information and says, well, here's the facts. Mrs. Alvarez says she's a straight shooter. She's telling you the bell did ring, and you do know the bell rang, and you saw everyone else go to class. And you don't want detention. Starts putting other facts in there. If you get detention, your mom's taking your X-Facts away. You don't want to be in trouble at home, right? So you get all these facts, right? All these facts. And also just some common sense facts that he should have. Miss Alvarez would never hurt you. You've known her. She's been your principal for the last 3 years, right? So cortex takes all that, makes it a smarter ball of information, and then sends it down to the amygdala, the alarm center. And the amygdala says, there's no worry here. You might want to get to class. Carry on. That's it. So it doesn't sound the alarm, so the amygdala doesn't do anything. But now let's switch it up. Now we have Sally. And Sally has been harmed in multiple ways. The people that are supposed to be there for her were not there. Boundaries violated. She has experienced an enormous amount of trauma. And so she doesn't process the same way. But you know what? Just like every other kid, just like Johnny, she likes basketball. So she's shooting hoops early in the morning. And then the bell rings. And Mrs. Alvarez comes out just like she did with Johnny. Mrs. Alvarez comes out and says, hey, Sally, get to class. The bell rang. Put some pep in your step. Hustle, 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 right? But what we know is the cortex doesn't work for Sally as well as it does for Johnny. So she takes that information in through the thalamus and sends it right across here, your survival pathway. And right before we get to the amygdala, swoops up some of those free-floating trauma memories that never made their way into the hippocampus. You know, the memories of the ones where she's been hurt and harmed and traumatized and violated, right? And so it swings through that, and now the amygdala says, hey, you either need to fight Mrs. Alvarez or you need to run from her right now. One or the other, that's all you got. And the alarm system rings the bell. So we have kids that have been traumatized. Whenever the message finally gets to the amygdala, it is misinterpreted, misunderstood, miscued. All kinds of misinformation is in there, especially if there's been trauma on the scene. Does that make sense? Right? And so now you have Sally who's giving Miss Alvarez the one finger salute, cussing her out, jumping over the fence. That's when you get to see how fast paraprofessionals really run, right? So the kid goes over the fence, you're like, whoo! So now what we have is this reaction. Was Miss Alvarez any different? No. Was she the traumatizing figure? No. Was there a traumatizing figure in the past for Sally? Yes. So all the information that she took in from the thalamus went through that experience, and the amygdala sounded. She got no cortex involvement. No cortex involvement. So this is a typical experience of a traumatized kid. Does that make sense? All right, let's do the same thing, adult learning theory, where you're just going to process this and pretend that you're explaining this to either a teacher or a mentor or a foster parent or someone in need. Just explaining the processing. Shall we? 5 minutes? Thank you.
I'm so mad. I literally my sweater. I got it.
It helps settle people
I
down.
was looking to see there's one right there. It is heavy, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, we're cold. Oh, okay.
That's our big discussion right now. No, it makes so much sense. I mean, it's like, okay, this is why I like kids. People traumatized. It's a lot of.
Yeah, I like
You just really set the whole system awry. I mean, some people naturally have HDS, a high defense system. They didn't have to be traumatized. It's just, they have defense in order to survive. So anyway, then later on, you have high defense. You can say something and they take it in a high defense way, and then now you have this reactive. So you can have an HDS system for lots of reasons. If people who struggle with mental illness always really have to be in defense mode because, hey, I'm working behind the scenes on stuff you don't even get.
Yes. You know, they always talk about some more balance. Here's my solution.
Oh, okay.
There's so much going on, and then he has
Yeah.
so he's had a lot of issues. It's just like they always say, no, it's normal and balance. I'm like, okay, I get what you're saying, but now you're right. All the chemicals that come into play, and it's not firing right.
So at the end, when they get to some of these really general interventions, they work across the gamut. Because the majority of these interventions are about learning how to settle nerves.
Wow. Yeah.
So in utero drug exposure, first of all, it's so intricate. There's so many steps. There's not one way to answer that question. So here's what I will say. Keep in mind that when a child is in utero 9 months, depending on what is being developed at the time and what substance is being offered in and how consistently and how potent that substance is, that's why no in utero drug kit looks like that. So if your cranium is being developed and the substance gets introduced, it could hinder the development of cranium because we're seeing facial eruptions. But over here, maybe what's being developed is a connection between the limbic system and the brainstem, that's where your emotions are. So if a substance came in enough to interrupt that, it was not have a higher emotion, the child cannot regulate, self-regulate. If in the 7th month of development for them. They were developing cortical connection. Might now have. There's so many variables. The equation for it is mathematically complicated. So like 9 months, the subject, the amount, and how much.
I love the way you put it, to like totally get it. So what happens to that? It's biological, right? I mean, because I didn't take any drugs when I was very young.
No, it definitely is. So we all have genetic templates, right? So I got dealt with genetic cards that I would be class 1, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing that you as a parent have done to modify or lessen that. And so that's
I'm
what
trying
I'm
not to blame myself, but it's
Yeah. So there's multiple ways that I go into about one, your genetic template allowed to manifest, or situations happen that allow modification of the brain, and then you know how to do it. So it can be done in both ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, genetic template, you can't fight that. If you're dealt with genetic code of anxiety, then it will manifest itself.
I just got my phone.
was like 6 years. So that's because so there's actually more people listening to you.
Yeah.
And then one of the, no. But one of the online oh, did we release all of your loved ones? Just now? Yeah, okay, good. Uh-huh.
Comments, and then Monica texted me and said, "We love the presentation."
I know, I was just telling her that somebody else said. Yeah. This is so good. I told her about that one. I'm learning more about the brain.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, there's a lot of different things, but it's just distilled in a certain way there, just makes sense, or she makes it funny, you know, so like, yeah, I like that. Try that as one of our music
As presenters, we're learning some techniques from you. Like I like this, okay now. Talk to each other.
Have you got my nervous filler? This is exactly.
Oh.
I like say like 800
But what do you do if somebody gets with the reaction? Like, how do you know if somebody actually says no? Or do you like, you know what I mean? Do you want them to raise their hands?
So if all the I said this makes sense, and I had something. I know, so I gave a little bit more explanation. So I actually did like a little.
I need to learn how to do that better.
We don't say, does this make sense? I know, I'm trying to.
But it's supposed to like,
my filler?
it's almost like a filler.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's go, you know, but I don't actually talk about it.
And in this training, it's so much. Questions like the question that I just got to figure out how to grade. Oh my gosh. You see what people are, you did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Who's doing the actual research on this? Like, who's doing this brain research? Is it like
Everybody that's involved in neuroscience right now.
neuroscience?
Is trauma.
Oh, yeah.
Goes out to eat it. Reality is simply a cause.
So like, it'll tune me out.
But it's still responsible for firefly and whatnot. Its ability to feel, always see it. The amygdala was destroyed.
You wouldn't feel that way.
No, and so you would put out a call for something if you have it, but I don't see
Yeah. Wow. Ready to retire here. Ready to retire. You should be able to retire.
And you were telling me, oh my God, unless you went on your camera. Yeah, I know. You had general addiction. Changes in the atlas brain. So far.
Me and my other
General self-harm. No, because I'm not classy or professional. Well, I can find you.
We know how to find you.
And if it goes to home.
Yes.
All right. Welcome back. All right, here we go. So,
Can I have a question
please.
about that?
Yes.
Wait.
I apologize.
You have to speak into
Oh, okay.
the unworking microphone.
We use this microphone for our
Okay.
participants. So don't be shy. Okay.
All right. Okay, so I have a question about this last slide that you were talking about. What are the prospects for repairing that once the cortex has sort of been taken offline by trauma?
Yes.
What are the, how does it get repaired?
Okay. It's beautiful prospects, right? And here's why. With neural replacement activities, remember neural replacement activities counter any messages that are left behind from a trauma, any messages that are left behind from a perpetrator, any messages that are left behind from an offender. Neural replacement activities begin to create neural pathways that I'm okay, that I'm worthy, that I'm valuable, that I have the right to take time. When you add time, you actually allow the cortex to come back online, which is why most of our traumatized children seem impulsive and often get misdiagnosed with ADHD, right? So if trauma's been on the scene, you want to be careful with certain diagnoses. So for clinicians, you always want to slow down. If there's trauma on the scene, you want to slow down with bipolar diagnoses. You want to slow down with ADHD diagnoses. You want to slow down with anxiety diagnoses. It doesn't mean that those diagnoses might not be there, but what it means is that impulsivity follows trauma. It gets packed in the bag because impulsivity occurs when you communicate from the thalamus to the amygdala. So that's why you want to teach these children that they are worthy enough to pause. Put the pause on, think it through. You teach them consequential thinking skills. If I do A and I do B, will I be okay with C and what it looks like? You teach them mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't just for shits and giggles. Mindfulness isn't just, it's not just for funsies, right? Mindfulness is really about settling the amygdala down and allowing the cortex to come back on the scene. You're re-inviting it to the party that it should have always been to. Should have always been at the party to help you think things through, right? And so mindfulness allows that settling to come back in. And so, yeah, so the prospects are high. The problem is impulsive behavior is not appreciated. And so instead you get reactions from people. You get reactions from foster parents. You get reactions from biological parents. You get reactions from the community. You get reactions from teachers. And so what happens is those reactions are like adding gasoline to the amygdala. And remember, the amygdala is already on fire. Does that help? Okay. All right. So I'm hoping you all had a chance to kind of talk about that a little bit.
Good. All right. Good.
So the amygdala has one job. It is to sound the alarm. And so when the alarm gets set off, it can only give you 3 answers, right? The amygdala is really an important piece of the brain, but it's a very small job. Sound the alarm or not sound the alarm. When it sounds the alarm, it gives you 3 options. You can either fight, flight, run away from it, hide, or you can freeze. Those are the 3 options that are given. So to put this into perspective, traumatized kids, their alarm system is really sensitive. So once again, I'm going to make kind of a thing related to age. Some of you in the room, do you remember when car alarms were first put in cars? Remember that?
Yes.
Okay, so car alarms, they were so sensitive. So you set your car alarm. They're not like today. I see some of you young people in here. You could be in Nebraska and click your car alarm and it'll still work. Right? That's not how it was back in the day. So back in the day, you get out of the car, you set your car alarm, and you walk just 5 feet in front of your car. You sneeze, you set off your alarm. Right? You gotta run back there. You gotta do it all over again. So they were too sensitive. And so back in the day, you had to recalibrate your car alarm and make it not so sensitive. So it would really only go off if someone was tampering with it and attempting to break in. The same as the amygdala in the child's brain that's been traumatized. The child's brain that's been traumatized is too sensitive. It goes off all the time. It misinterprets cues all the time. Mom comes in and says, hey, clean up your room. It looks awful in here. If you are too sensitive in your amygdala due to your trauma, you are going to react and go, what are you going to do if I don't? How are you going to hurt me? How is this not going to be okay? Teacher comes in and says, hey, we're done with this activity. Let's move to this activity now. Why? Do you think I'm incompetent? Do you think I'm stupid? And what are you going to do over there at that activity? What if I can't do it? How is this all going to go bad? How will I be harmed? How will I be hurt? How will I be violated? Right? So misinterpretations all the time because the sensitivity dial is turned up too high on the traumatized brain in the amygdala. Does that help? Okay. Questions on that? I get kind of excited, but I'm hoping I can contaminate you with that passion about this topic. So, sensitive alarm. So when it does go off, even if it's a misunderstanding, when it does go off, it only gives you these 3 options: fight, flight, or freeze. Here's what I need you to know though. In our evolutionary makeup, these things served us well. So in our evolutionary makeup, picture it, us all in a tribe and we're trying to collect firewood and catch animals and eat animals and whatnot. If an animal came our way and we could quickly ascertain, wow, this animal is bigger than us and we're gonna be eaten, right? Then we would quickly want our amygdala to turn on and sound the alarm so that we could fight the animal, right? Or we could run from the animal. Freeze, it's a little bit more difficult. Freeze happens when you realize, oh my gosh, I cannot fight this animal and I cannot run from this animal. And so you freeze. In our evolutionary makeup, it was for a purpose. It served a purpose for us to survive. And in the evolutionary makeup, here's what it did. You froze and you were like, I'm going camouflage. You can't see me, so you won't eat me. Nope, you can't. I'm a stick. Yeah, that's it. I'm a stick and you can't see me and you're not going to eat me. That's the one part of freeze. Here's the harsh part of freeze. This is the last hard part in the training. Stay with me. The harsh part of freeze is your mind and body are working together so that when you're being devoured by that animal, it will not hurt as much. Your mind and body are working. They have gone in sync to separate so that you can, in a way, dissociate while you are being torn limb from limb by that animal. Now put that in perspective of our today's traumatized children. If you have a child in front of you that their alarm bell gets rung and they fight, you'll see it. They come out aggressive. They're yelling. They might not be ready to physically fight, but they come out really, really aggressive, a lot of egregious behaviors. If the flight is the one that works for them, then they might just kind of shrink, put the hoodie on, disassociate from everyone, kind of retreat to themselves, settle down, or they might actually take off and run and leave and avoid, right? So conflict avoidance comes from as well. But if you have that child in front of you that the alarm system has been rung and they are there physically, but they're not present, they're not truly present, they have gapped out, they have what in clinical literature referred to as true dissociation. They have left their body, they have left the building in essence, even though they're physically in front of you, If that happens, what you need to realize is the reason why they went to freeze is because during their original trauma, freeze was the only one that could work for them. That means that they were in the presence of a perpetrator or an offender that they could not fight and they could not run from. And their body had to go limp to suffer whatever damage was being done to their body during the trauma. Does that make sense? So when you see a kid completely gap out in front of you, approach gently and never approach from behind. You take large sweeping circle walks towards that child so they can see you coming out of the periphery, right? You talk slow, you talk gentle, no hand movements. I'm a big hand talker, can you tell? Big hand talker. When I'm working with my traumatized kids in classrooms, hands always behind the back, always behind the back. And I walk, big sweeping circle. I say their name slow and gently and kindly, and I remind them where they're at, right? John, it's me, Jen, and we're here in Mrs. Tyson's class. And we're together. And we're gonna be all right. That's it. Does that make sense? Long, slow, safe. Let them see you coming. So, the reason why I share this is because a lot of times when you see a kid gap out, what is it really perceived as? When you see a kid, you're asking a kid a question.
They're daydreaming.
Daydreaming, what else? Let's even go a little further. Rude, willful, attitude, choosing not to be participatory, choosing not to participate. Remember, 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10. So could you have this kid right here that is rude, willful, not wanting to participate? Absolutely. But statistically speaking, you may have 6 out of 10 here. You might have one of the 6. So walk slow, walk gently, and wonder if they have indeed entered a freeze mode, because freeze was all that was available to them at the time that they were with their perpetrator. There comes a moment when you're in the midst of being harmed where you quickly assume, you quickly do the calculations that I can't beat this person, right? This person is a family friend who's 240 pounds, very strong. I happen to be in a room. I don't even know where the exit is. Hell, I don't even know where this house is. We're at a family friend's house. I don't know where I would go. And so your brain quickly goes, well, flight is off and fight is off. And so then your mind and body go in sync together to help you get through it. We all right? Okay, breathe. Remember, sometimes when you hear information that's kind of hard, you have a tendency not to breathe. And when you stop breathing, well, if you stop breathing too long, you're gonna die. But when you stop breathing, you actually send a message to the amygdala, and it's kind of wondering, are you in danger? Traumatized kids hold their breath all the time, which is why the #1 intervention with anybody is learn how to breathe. Just breathe. Okay? Don't hold your breath, especially when you're hearing something you don't like. And remember, traumatized kids hear stuff they don't like all the time because it went through the survival pathway, never to the cortex. And the cortex would have said, wait, Mrs. Alvarez just said hustle, put some pep in your step, the bell rang, get to class, right? But it went through the survival pathway, which said a whole lot of other things, right? So then you begin to hold your breath and your amygdala wants to help you, right? It's the only time we are without breath is prior to death. And so it doesn't like that. So all interventions start with breathe. All right? Okay. So doesn't really matter what the stressor was, what the trauma was. In general, hopefully everything that you learned so far was that the architecture of the brain is modified when there is stress, chronic distress, toxic stress, trauma on the scene. It changes the structure, it changes the chemical reactivity in the brain. We all need to know that, then we'll approach kinder and gentler. That's what we're looking at prior. Oh, is this your slide? Oh, I'm supposed to do a break.
Not quite yet though, right?
Was that the last slide you were raising?
No? No.
Keep going.
Oh, okay.
Go forward and.
Click the next one.
Let's see. Quick. Nope, mine's not up there. That's all right. Okay, so let's do a couple things. I'm gonna walk it through without it. Are you all right with me? You okay? All right. So here we go. What I'd like to do is I'm gonna teach you the hand model. It's gonna put all this stuff in perspective. The hand model is beautiful to use with the children you work with, the teachers you work with, the mentors you work with, definitely teams. So those of you running team success programs, introduce this hand model. So here we go. Hold up your hand. Okay, take this thumb, please. Roll the thumb over. Bring your forefingers down. All right. This is called an integrated brain. This is what an integrated brain looks like. So if we could look inside your head It's believed that it would look something like this, right? But we won't look inside your head because that'll be painful and traumatizing, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do today. All right, so what we know is the 4 fingers represent the cortex, your frontal lobe. The thumb represents your limbic system, your emotional system. Then you see right here where your palm rests onto your arm right here. Right here, this is your survival system. This is your most primitive part of your brain, most primitive part of your brain, right here at the bottom. And then this would be considered your spinal cord, right? Going on down. All right, so when all works well, it's like this. This is an integrated brain. It's integrated. The reason why we use that term in clinical literature is it means that all the different pieces are talking to each other. The cortex gets to talk to the emotional part of the brain. The cortex gets to talk to the survival part of the brain. The cortex gets to say, hey, what chemicals should we release in the body? What chemicals should we send on down here and release out through our nervous system, right? So that's integrated, meaning everything communicates well together. So the cortex, this is responsible for your problem solving, your brainstorming, your solution seeking. It's a smart part of your brain. It's also where you hold facts and information. It's just the most awesome part of the brain. It's also the last to evolve. It's the last to evolve. This is what separates us away from other primates, right? Is that our cortex is exceptionally large. Some of us not so large, not as large as it should be. But anyway, so what it does is it separates us away from other primates because we have the largest cortex. What's important to note is the cortex does not finish growing until approximately age 24, 25, which is why true adolescence is, the true definition of adolescence differs from the definition of what a teen is. Teen simply means 13, 14, 15, right? Any age ending in teen. True adolescence is the onset of puberty, which can be different in some cultures. So it can be 9, 10, 11, 12. The onset of puberty all the way to the age of 24. That's the true definition of adolescence, right? True definition of adolescence. The last thing to truly mature all the way is the cortex, smart part of the brain, right? So if you're looking at some of your family members that are 22, 23, 24, give them a couple more years. More years, the cortex come all the way in. All right, so, and then like I said, down here is your limbic system. It's your emotional part of the brain. And there's 2 important elements on the limbic system. One is your amygdala that we talked about. Remember the amygdala? The other is your hippocampus, which is where you store your normal memories, your non-traumatized memories, which is the part that closes down. You can kind of picture it now because it's going to be so cool. If the amygdala alarm sounded, right, beep, 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 the alarm's going off, it shuts down everything that's not needed. It shuts down the cortex, it shuts down the hippocampus, because the primary focus is to survive. And all you need is your amygdala and your survival part of your brain. That's what you need to survive. So everything else goes offline. And so the more that you are traumatized, the more difficulty it is getting your cortex back online. Okay, so let's leave the topic of trauma just for a moment. Back to our handy dandy model of the brain. All of us as a human species, when we enter a negative emotional mood state, all of us, when we enter a negative emotional mood state, let's say you're driving in traffic and someone cuts you off. Let's say you're having an argument with your family. You're having an argument with your 17-year-old son. The dishwasher doesn't magically empty itself, JoJo. All right, not that that happened. Right, and then, you know, he's arguing back, but I have so much, Mom. I got water polo and band practice, you know, like my life is only here to empty the dishwasher. So when you enter that negative emotional mood state, all of us as a species, you flip your lid. All of us do. All of us do when we enter a negative emotional mood state. Your cortex leaves, and now it cannot communicate with the rest of your brain. You say things that you cannot take back when you have a flipped lid. When you've lost your cortex, that's when you say stuff you can't take back. So that emotional mood state sets in, one of panic, one of anger, one of frustration, one of resentment. When that negative emotional mood state sets in, you communicate from the limbic system part of your brain, not the cortex. Because if the cortex was still involved, the cortex would say, don't say that. That's going to take 3 years of marriage therapy to clean that up. Don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, right? Don't say it. You're going to lose your promotion. Don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, right? So all of us, when we enter a negative emotional mood state, we flip our lid and we communicate here. Now, for traumatized children, here's how it differs. They actually go through life, sometimes triggered, sometimes not. Often the lid is off. Often they're flipping the lid, they're misinterpreting stuff all the time, and they're coming at you very raw and emotional, right? So traumatized kids are always saying things that get them in more hot water, always being overwhelmed by everything and flipping their lid and coming at you in a very raw, emotional way. So imagine what it would be like to go through life from the limbic system, always coming at the world, always coming at others with your limbic emotional system versus coming at the world smartly. That's not even a word, right? Is smartly a word?
It is now.
It is. Coming at the world in a smart way, in a problem-solving way, in a solution-seeking way, coming at the world in a very smart way. Do you see how much easier life would be if you came at it like this? Very difficult coming at it like this, which, by the way, for anybody working in schools, is why traumatized kids are always the ones that are struggling with academia, always struggling in academics, right? Always having that struggle because they're typically trying to learn like this, and you can only learn in survival mode. I mean, in learning mode when the cortex is down. Make sense? Good, good. So the things that we want to do is we want to be able to teach people how to get their cortex back online. Some of you naturally learn it. Some of you naturally learn it because things have happened to you where you're like, oh, you know, gosh, I remember getting so activated and so angry, and I said some stuff I couldn't took back, and now I'm cleaning that mess up. Now I'm trying to make amends in that relationship. Now I'm trying to make amends at that work site. Now I'm trying to make amends with that friend because I made those messes. So some of you have caught on to your own patterns and themes, and you realize, well, I don't want to do that anymore. And so you learn to communicate a little bit differently. But before you learn to communicate, you had to learn to calm. You had to learn to calm to get the cortex back on. So some of you did it naturally, and you found things that work for you. So in the heat of the moment, when you're a hot mess and everything has gone sideways, what works for you to calm down? Because it's different for everybody, right? It's different for everybody. So for me, being able to go for a walk without someone saying, we've got to really talk about this, right? So no, I just need to go for a walk and I'd be able to calm down and breathe on my own. For others, it might be something else. It could be going for a bike ride. It could be reading a book. It could be putting on headphones and listening to music of your choice. So what I'd like you to do in this moment is you talk in your tables, not to your tables, talk with the people at your tables and identify what are some of the things you naturally do. You can look at your life now and you know that it helps get your cortex on. You might not have known that in the past, but you know you do some things to settle and calm yourself. Identify them. Go ahead. Let's take 5 minutes and identify them.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot better. So when I find myself going like this, and he's going like this, I'm like this. No talking.
Yeah. I will. Like, I gotta go to the bathroom. Yeah.
So on your slides, you'll have access to this. This breaks down the hand model. And the way my slides are created is I always try to give you a YouTube site or address so that you can go and click on it and it will teach you more about that topic. Because maybe you just needed a little bit more information. And so it's just always connected to a small YouTube talking about the hand model. Is that all right? And you'll see that on a number of slides as we go through. So what were some of the things that you came up with that when you enter a negative emotional mood state, you know you flipped your lid? What are some of the things that you've naturally learned to do in life that help calm you down? Would anybody mind sharing? Please. Pet your cat. Fantastic. Some great research coming out of that, by the way, the ability to create homeostasis back in your system again by touching another living animal that there's a loving connection to. Yes, good. Pet your cat. What else?
I go outside, just getting out of the building seems to put it back for me.
Okay, just going outside, getting some fresh air outside the building. Excellent, excellent. Someone else?
Taking a cold drink of water and just noticing how it goes down your throat.
Oh my goodness. Hopefully everyone heard that. Drinking a cold glass of water, noticing how it goes down in the system, which by the way, and you probably know this, Sharon, being a clinician, what's really interesting about cold water, it's actually an intervention that you use when you're at school and you're working with a child that's been escalated, you see them triggered up. You need to have a mission where you walk together to the coldest water fountain that's known on that campus. It's actually a grounding technique. What it does is it shakes up how the primitive part of the brain starts to connect to the rest of the part of the brain. Because as the cold water goes through the body, it allows you to be grounded, starting with your most primitive reptile part of your brain. So, well done. Give me another one.
Deep breathing.
Deep breathing.
Yes.
Yes. How often do you think you're doing that?
Not often.
Not as much. But that deep breathing starts to alleviate the stress in the amygdala, and you're giving the amygdala a really nice message. I am not under any survival threat, right? So you're letting the amygdala kind of, you can calm down and go on away. We're okay. So deep breathing, good. One more.
We have a couple from our online.
Please.
We have distance from others, draw, go for a walk alone, which is what you like to do, listen to music, take a walk, work on a craft.
Oh.
Working on a craft would actually cause me to have more stress. I just
Yes, and you know, all of those are wonderful. Do you see that they might not work for everybody? Just as Carrie said, you know, working on a craft or maybe writing. Some people write, some people journal. If it's not for you, then don't do it. What you can be doing is just causing a little bit more cortisol flow, and you don't need that. You don't need that. And so you really have to work and find out what's good for you. That sounds so silly for me to say, but here's why I have to say it. I often will walk into agencies or school settings where someone has printed off a list of coping and calming strategies from Pinterest, and they have handed it out. Not anything against Pinterest, but what they've done is they've handed it out to every child there. You need to be careful. You could actually be giving them a trigger. So for instance, on some of those lists, it says take a hot bath. So I came to a client one time and they were given that list, and taking a hot bath was at the top. It's important for you all to know that that person was violated in their bathroom from ages 7 to 12. That's the last place they needed to be. They also handed out the list where it said, read a book. Well, you handed it out to 3 of my children, 3 of my clients who could not read, who are illiterate. And so what you did is you helped them hone their skills to lie to you. And they held the book, despite the fact they had it upside down. They held it and they pretended and they faked. So you see how they have to now isolate from the real world because they have to create distance to protect themselves. So never get out a pre-printed calming list. You create a calming list with another person. And you talk about, oh my gosh, crafts, that would be so awesome. And how would that work for you? And you let them kind of relish in, here's how it would work, and this is the kind of craft, but not this, or this is the kind of music, but not this kind of music, right? And so you create it. There's beauty in creating a calming list. Don't give out pre-manufactured, prefabricated lists. You may be passing out a trigger without knowing it. Does it make sense? All right, all right. So we did that activity. Oh, one last question, if I may. So you know how we listed off some of your things, right? Some of you, and there's so many more out there, you know, bike riding, whatever it may be. So you get your lid back on. What I want you to do for 1 minute silently to yourself is look back in your history. Look back in your history and identify if there was ever a time where you wish you would have rolled out a calming skill versus going with your flipped lid, right? Where you still had your flipped lid. Just 1 minute silently identify. I wish I would have pulled up my calming list and got my cortex back on because I'm still saying things that I can't take back. Just 1 minute. Please do that silently to yourself. Get that idea in your mind. Okay, everyone have one incident where they can look back and they know their lid was flipped, right? And they said some things or did some things they can't take back. This is a lesson in empathy. Traumatized children do not need to be prompted to bring up those experiences. Traumatized children have their brain, it's on a quick Rolodex. These experiences are always reminded to them. Remember how you lost your last foster placement. Remember how you destroyed your family. Remember when you disclosed dad had to leave. Remember when you did this? Remember when you threw the book in class? Remember when you hit your friend and you lost your best friend forever? Remember when you did this? Remember when you stole? Remember when you lied? So this is a lesson in empathy. I had to prompt you to go back in your historical record and pull something up where you wish you would have done something differently, right? Traumatized children do not need that, and here is why. The cortex usually helps us settle and calm things and says things like this: hey, we all make mistakes. You learned from it. What did you learn from it? Now move on. That's how the cortex talks to us. Traumatized children don't have that luxury, do they? So they get the limbic system doing the talking anyway, right? I mean, doing the talking to them, which is you're unworthy and you're going to screw up. It's just a matter of time. Does that make sense? So that lesson was a lesson in empathy. You had to be prompted. Not all traumatized people have to be prompted. They play out day after day after day after day, which is why they love distraction, and they get it in classroom and families, right? Create all that distraction with chaos. So that's a little bit about the model of the brain. We're going to skip the activity because we did it ahead of time. Everyone, I don't want you to think I'm jipping you. I already talked about the hippocampus, but just so you know, the hippocampus, here's some general facts. It's where your normal memories are stored. They're organized. They make sense. There's sequential order. Trauma memories are not. They're verbally accessible, meaning if I was sitting around with a group of friends and we were talking about what we did last holiday, right, I could actually have my hippocampus open up and tell me what I did last holiday. Said, oh, remember you got to go away for 4 days with family, right? So verbally accessible. I can pull them up by merely talking, but I can also say, no, I don't have time for this conversation. I got to go, I'm late, right? And so I have control over the hippocampus opening up and the memory coming out. Control over the retrieval. As I just spoke, I can also have time to pull up something and think about it, even if it was painful, right? Maybe not traumatize you, but painful, I can still pull it up and explore it, talk about it, create safety when I'm doing that. I might have to get together with my friends and say, you know, I'm really missing my mom. It's been a while. And then my friends are going to come together and we're going to have coffee and they're going to let me, you know, be a hot mess in front of them and cry a little bit and whatnot. So I am retrieving that memory and I'm asking for it to be explored outright. So when it's in the hippocampus, you have more control over it. It's time tagged. Time tag meaning I know if I pull up a memory, I can usually identify where it happened in my historical record. Did that happen last year? Did that happen 2 years ago? Did that happen this holiday, last holiday? Did this happen this summer? So it's one time tag where it fell on my historical time record, my historical timeline. But time tagged also means the duration, how long it lasted. How long it lasted. So how long did I spend at families over the holidays? How long did I go to the cabin with Nana, right? So I'm able to kind of see how long something lasted. Trauma memories are not time tagged. I'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, the memories that make it in the hippocampus are, and they can be updated by new information. So once again, let's say I'm out with my friends and we're talking about what we did last summer, and I say, oh yeah, you know, that's when we went to the lake, and they say, actually, Jen, no, that wasn't last summer. Remember, that was 2 summers ago because last summer, blah 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 blah. They have corrected the information. Memories that are in the hippocampus can be updated with new insight, with new info, right? Which doesn't seem like a big deal now, but it does when I talk about trauma in a minute. So information that makes its way in the hippocampus can be corrected, can be modified, can be updated. If you can kind of picture this file cabinet as the hippocampus, remember it's on the limbic system here, right? So this file cabinet with all these memories in it, they actually have tentacles grow off the file cabinet and they attach to other areas of the brain. And that's why when you're thinking and doing and planning and solving, you have access to that which you have remembered in the past, which is where learning blocks are, right? And so you can pull the learning or pull out some calculus. So it's all connected. Traumatized children don't have that connection, which is why it's much harder to learn, and they are always academically struggling. Everything in the hippocampus helps me understand what's happening now. It helps me put it in context, helps me conceptualize it. And so the hippocampus just is this wonderful way to assist you in learning and developing and modifying, right? So that's what your hippocampus is. So trauma memories, they have totally different characteristics. So trauma memories, number one, they're not organized. They're not in sequential order. They literally are like a 100-piece puzzle, but someone only gave you 50 of the puzzle pieces. Because trauma, remember, if it's in the hippocampus, you get to remember it almost like a film reel. You can kind of pull up and go, oh, you know, what happened last Christmas? Oh, yeah. And you can see the little segments, and they make sense, and they're usually in linear sequential order. For trauma memories, that's not the fact. That's not the case. They're usually quite discombobulated, very disorganized, and lots of pieces missing. When I do groups with kids, I often will have a puzzle. It's a smaller puzzle, it'll be about 100 pieces, but I have purposely removed some of the puzzle pieces, right? And then we put the puzzle together, and as we're working on it, I don't let them see the box, by the way, that has the picture of it. I ask them as we go on, what do you think this is so far? And you know, they've got maybe 30 pieces put together so far. What do you think it is so far? And you can hear them say all kinds of things, right? Oh, I think it's a picture of camping in a meadow. I think it's a picture of the beach. I think it's a picture of the ocean. No, you know what? I think there's something on fire. There's a house fire, right? Because there's a little flame in one of the puzzle pieces. And then we'll just keep building, keep building, keep building. And then eventually I show them the box. And here's what's really interesting. The fire, something drastic. It was a campfire, and everyone was just roasting s'mores. It was rather pleasant. It was rather nice. But the traumatized brain doesn't keep that picture going. The traumatized brain saw the flame and automatically went to someone's hurting, something's on fire, something's ruined, something's broken, something's dangerous. So the ability to put the puzzle together where there are a number of puzzle pieces missing, that's what it's like to go back and think about a memory that is about a trauma. You don't have all the pieces, and you always are struggling, and you start to doubt yourself. Am I crazy? Did this really happen? Did it happen as I think it happened? Did it go down the way I thought it went down? Or who was all in the room when that happened? I thought there was others in the room. I thought I was by myself with only one other person. So as memory repairs itself and starts to come in, you can have traumatized children that are completely scared and terrified because they realize I was beaten in a room and 2 of you watched. But when I originally remembered it, I only had the one that was hurting me. But now I have different elements of the memory, and 2 of my family members were in that room, and you watched what happened. And so now we send that kid to school, and you wonder why they're acting a mess, right? Right? Does that make sense? So they're not sequential, they're not linear, and you're searching for the missing pieces your entire life. You're searching for the missing pieces your entire life. You have little control over the retrieval of these memories. Because remember, we believe that they linger outside the amygdala. They linger outside the amygdala, which is on the limbic system, which is why when information comes in through the thalamus, it goes through these lingering traumatic memories. That's where misinterpretation and misunderstanding happens all the time in traumatized people. Like, I thought you were yelling at me, and you're my boss, and you're like, no, I was just redirecting you. You have to do X, Y, and Z, right? But the way I interpreted it is it went through my survival pathway, and everyone else that has ever harmed me, your presence simply went through that, and that's how I'm interpreting you, right? Which is why you got me to react, right? And which is why I said things at the workplace I can't take back now. So they linger around out there, and when they're not in the hippocampus, when memories are in the hippocampus, you have total control over them. But when they're not in the hippocampus, they often will linger around, get triggered up, or, as we learned earlier, need no trigger, simply a visitor coming by to ruin another day, another moment. They're situationally accessible. This is how the triggers work. So I'll talk a little bit about the triggers just really quickly. So triggers can be anything. It can be something you smell, something you see, something you feel, something you experience. Triggers can literally anything. Remember how I talked about implicit memory? You can have internal triggers. You can actually be going through your day and you had a typical stressor and it made you a little bit anxious and it made you a little bit fearful. Those 2 mood states became a trigger and brought up things you hadn't thought about for years. See, that's an internal trigger, not an external trigger. External trigger is you're wearing the scent of someone that harmed me. You're wearing the favorite color of someone that harmed me. You simply have the body stature and build of someone that violated me, right? So external triggers. The internal triggers is I got a D on my physics exam and it left me feeling kind of disappointed and fearful. What's going to happen now? Well, those are feelings from implicit memory when I was traumatized. And so now out of nowhere, I just invited the memory of being traumatized. Are you with me? All right. So with these triggers, I want you to know that people don't always know what they are, and I'll tell, so this will be a really quick story to put it all into perspective. This story helps us make sense and create a little bit of space for understanding triggers. So early in my career, I used to be assigned to homes where it was the last attempt at a foster placement. If this child were to lose this foster placement, they would be in residential care. It was the last attempt. And so I would arrive at the home, and I was always working with a partner, so I was always out there in twos. And what we were meant to do is we were supposed to go into the home and observe. We were supposed to blend in, right? How you blend in, right? It's like 8 o'clock in the morning, hey, right? So you're supposed to blend in, and you're just supposed to observe, and you're looking for patterns and themes. Looking for patterns and themes as to what might escalate or trigger a child. So we arrive at this house, my partner and I, and it's early in the morning. This is a 17-year-old, 16 and a half, 17-year-old foster child. She had been in foster care, what's now referred to as resource care. She had been in foster care since age 2. Keep that in mind, since age 2. And here she is, 17. She had been in multiple foster homes, a couple of group home stints, but multiple foster homes. This was her last ditch effort. If this didn't work, she was going to remain in foster care, in group home setting until her 18th birthday. So we arrive on the scene, and it's a great morning. It's a Monday morning, nothing's going on, everything's calm. We're watching them. The mom is a little Hispanic mom, doesn't speak any English. She's there getting the morning ready, whatnot. Monday, beautiful. Tuesday, beautiful, nothing. I'm like, what are we even doing here? Wednesday, nothing. Thursday, boom, out of nowhere, typical morning, out of nowhere, this gal starts screaming, goes down the hallway, punches holes in the sheetrock down the hallway. And then I start looking, and I recognize all the pictures are strategically placed up and down. It's because this gal had done this before, and foster mom had placed the pictures to cover up the holes. And I looked again, and there's no glass in any of the pictures. This is a smart foster mom. Removed all the glass, or it had already been broken. And now I understand the unique decorating context, right? So she walks down the hallway, punching holes in the wall, screaming. I mean, bloody murder, just screaming. Goes into her bedroom door, slams the bedroom door, opens up the window, jumps out the window, and walks to school. So I look at my partner. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? I don't know. Do you know what happened? I don't know what happened. So we run out the front door because our job has to be to de-escalate her before she arrives to school. So we catch up with her and we de-escalate her, calm her down. She has no idea, gives us no information as to what has happened. But we calm her down before she gets to school. So those of you that work in schools, you're welcome. All right. So we come back, we kind of review the morning, we think about what had happened, we kind of replayed in our mind. We can't find any triggering event. We have no idea what happened. So we come back the next day, Friday, nothing, smooth. We worked on Saturdays, no Sunday, we worked on Saturdays. Saturday, smooth, no issue at all. Monday, nothing, smooth. Tuesday, nothing, smooth. Wednesday, nothing, smooth. Thursday, boom, again, huge blowout. Does the same thing, down the hallway, punching new holes. There's no sheetrock left, it's just studs with strategically placed pictures, right? So window open, bedroom door slammed, out the window, walking to school, we run up and we catch up with her again. Calm her down, no insight as to what has happened. So my partner and I, we were like, oh my gosh, what is happening? I don't know. And I will let you know, we ate a considerable amount of food at this family's house because this little Hispanic mom, she cooked. It was unbelievable. So we learned to watch and observe like this. Because we didn't want to miss anything. We didn't know what was triggering her. So yeah, we just had like bibs of food and we ate like this all the time. So I'm like, that's 2 Thursdays in a row, nothing. Come back on Friday, smooth. Come back on Saturday, smooth. I was like, that's it. You know what? We need to go ahead and pull all the charts on this kid and figure out, is there a pattern and theme that we're missing? What are we missing? So on Monday, we're in the office. We have all these files. In one of the files was left the original ER report for CPS, the original emergency room report. At age 2, this gal was hit with those tortilla pans, the comment? Say it, please. Thank you. So very heavy, right? Very heavy, has a distinct odor, aroma when you start cooking with it, right? So she was beaten with one of these as a child when she was 2, dislocated her retina, cracked her cheekbone, actually had some temporary loss of hearing. That's what got her into the emergency room. That's why she was originally removed as a 2-year-old and placed into the system. She does not recall this beating. So triggers do not always make sense to who it's happening. So my partner and I look at this and we go, oh my gosh, what happens every Thursday morning? What does this mom do in this foster home? Makes fresh tortillas, brings up the comal, turns it on, heats up, the aroma is sending through, right? So she cooks it. So here we meet with the foster mom and we present our hypothesis. I don't, because I don't speak Spanish. So I sat there like a bump on the log, just so worried and nervous. And so my partner who spoke Spanish was talking to this foster mom, and it was this beautiful little emotional ping pong match, back and forth, communicating. Foster mom gets up, takes the comal, and leaves the house. Now, I've been fired by a lot of clients before. That's pretty normal. It's pretty typical, right? Foster mom actually leaves the house. So I look at my partner. I go, where is she going? Where is she going? She said, I don't know. And I'm panicked. Flip lid. It's all going to come around full circle. Flip lid. I'm like, well, you should know where she's going. Why don't you know where she's going? She's gone. 12 minutes. Tick, 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 which felt like an eternity. I go, you should know where she's going. She's Mexican. You're Mexican. She goes, you're so stupid. You are so stupid, Jen. Not every Mexican knows what every other Mexican is doing. You're just dumb. And I said, I'm sorry, my lid is split and I don't know what I'm doing. Right? It was a hot mess. It was a total hot mess. And then the foster mom walks back in. They have this conversation back again. I go, what happened? What happened? She said she took the comal down to her sister's who lives 2 blocks away. She will not make tortillas in this house anymore because that's her daughter and she loves her. Oh. That's a neural replacement activity. You're worthy. You're valuable. I love you. I got you. That's a neural replacement activity. So that's not a foster mom. That's a neuroscientist raising children. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. Does that make sense? So, neural replacement activity. I will let you know, this gal went on to go to college. And before she left, any of you have one of those meetings? They're similar to FDMs, family decision-making meetings where you get together or whatnot, you have talk. So, before she went away to college, all the providers were in the room. And she said, so I'm leaving to college. I'm going to give you a direction. And we're like, oh, okay. And she's all, stop calling her my foster mom. She's my mom. And that was it. That was it. You got it. You got it. To this day, they still meet. She still is her mom. They meet. They have Christmas together. They have holidays together. They have Thanksgiving together. And she's working on her stuff, and she's going to college, and she's doing quite well. She's doing quite well. That is a neural replacement activity. Everything that foster mom did planted the seed that you're worthy, you're valuable, you're important, you're significant, you got this, and I got you. Everything that counters her traumatic experience. Does that make sense? That's when you can see the lid coming back on. That's when you can see the cortex connecting once again. So we all do these neural replacement activities. So you're going to be easier to teach it to others if you start figuring out when your lid is flipped and figuring out what you need to do to get your lid back on, right? So triggers send your lid off, and you don't think clearly anyway. But triggers do not have to be known. To this day, that young woman does not know who beat her with that pan. She does not know if it was her mom or her mom's boyfriend that lived in the home at the time. She has no idea who did it. She cannot recall how long the beating lasted. She cannot even recall where she was taken to the hospital at. She knows none of that. So triggers lay dormant, and they can attach to the senses. And so the sense was the heating of the comal, the sense of smell. Does that make sense? And sent her into a blind rage. Here's how it leaks all the way back to your 4 implicit memories. Her emotions of being terrorized and terrified at age 2, procedural, not being able to protect yourself at age 2, right? In perception, I know that an adult did this. All adults are bad. All adults are harmful. Bodily sensation. Feeling as though you were being harmed in the moment, even though you were not. You were sitting in the home of the foster mom who loves you. That the feeling that you were being harmed, which is why she went down the hallway in a blind rage and tore the place up. That is implicit memory coming out to play. Right? Make sense? All right. We're good?
Yeah, a little
Not really.
emotional.
Okay.
Right?
Breathe. Remember, when you hear something that's uncomfortable, you tend to stop breathing, you activate your amygdala. So let's do this. Let's take 2 minutes. You process as adult learners. Take 2 minutes, and I'm gonna check and see where we are on slides. Does that sound good? All right, 2 minutes. Process.
We should be okay with your slide.
We have this
We
like.
traded out the PowerPoint. So.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. What I meant is I have to check to see my timing.
Oh, your time.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, Monica says we need a bathroom break.
Yeah.
Oh, please, yes.
All right.
Okay, understood. Does everyone know where the bathroom is here, by the way? You go right out this door.
Let's
Look
take
to
a
your left,
break.
look to your right.
Thank you, Monica.
Okay, I'm recording.
You're on.
And you're on.
All right, welcome back. So when you start learning these facts, right, you start understanding a little bit about the neuroscience of the brain, then there's certain things that you can do for yourself, right? So one of the top things you can do for yourself is resolve yourself to this. The kid who has experienced trauma is not trying to push your buttons. Though he or she will push your buttons, but the intent is not there. Remember, they are reacting, which means we cannot react. We have to respond, right? Not react, but respond. Respond means there's a cognitive element to it. Reaction means there's no cognitive element to it. So we have to be able to respond, not react. So just resolve yourself to the fact that your buttons will be pushed by a child that has been traumatized, because they'll constantly be misinterpreting you, constantly misunderstanding things, constantly coming at you from the limbic emotional system, constantly have a fire raging in the amygdala. So resolve yourself. They're not purposely trying to push your buttons, right? And the moment you do that, it will help you settle. It will help you settle. This one, I don't know if you can see that wherever you're at, but what it says is being ignored causes the same chemical reaction in the brain as experiencing a physical injury. One more time. Being ignored. So here's what we've got to do different. When you have a child that has some behaviors you're not appreciative of, you have to ignore the behavior but see the child. You actually cause enormous damage to children that have been traumatized when we ignore them. We don't like what they're doing, so we ignore them. We've got to work on that. Even if you have an adult in your life that has had some chronic distress in their childhood, has had some trauma in their childhood, as an adult, when you reject and ignore them, it is like punching them in the face. Do not ignore. So ignore the behavior, but see the child. There's lots of different ways that you can do that, and there's trainings all over. You've got PBIS, positive behavioral interventions. You've got Toolbox in schools, which is a fabulous social emotional learning skill set. So don't ignore a child, which, by the way, is why the new research says that your timeouts, if you do timeouts, you must be in the proximity. Do not abandon that child. When you put a child in timeout and you walk away and they cannot see you, that feels like abandonment. And abandonment sets off the amygdala and releases cortisol and adrenaline just as if they are being beaten right then in the moment, right? And so while they're screaming for you and throwing stuff around and they don't want to sit in the timeout, you need to stay in the proximity. That's the new and current research. You do not put in timeout and you do not walk away. You stay somewhere in the proximity. Stay somewhere in the proximity. Most children that are having to be put in timeout don't have any self-regulation skills. By you staying in the proximity, you're actually modeling self-regulation because you're modeling standing there, you're modeling breathing. Remember, mirror neurons, monkey see, monkey do neurons. So if you start breathing slow and gentle and calmly and methodically, they will start breathing slow and calmly and methodically and gently. So just slow your breathing, even if it has to be acted out a little bit, right? So if you're my child and I put you in timeout, right? And I'm here, I'm actually going to stand in proximity of you and I'm going to let you see this. We got this. I'm going to turn away. I'm not going to give you all my attention. It's not going to be rewarding. I'm just going to turn away. I'm not going to abandon you. I'm not going to abandon you. Does that make sense? All right, good, good. So ignoring. So for those of you that have adults in your family that have had past traumas, don't ignore and reject because then they will react and you'll be very surprised and then you'll misdiagnose them. Yeah, I've worked with all kinds of things. So stay in proximity. So trauma-created pathways. I talked earlier about these neural pathways, right? So neural pathways are like information highways in the brain. All kinds of information flowing back and forth that you're able to dip into and pull information out of. And healthy neural pathways, everything you've learned, right? Everything you've learned, everything that's been healthfully done to you, how you've been nourished, how you've been nurtured, right? If you have a parent that says, you can do this, you got this, that gets in your neural pathway. It floats along that information highway. If you had a parent that said to you, you can do hard things, right? I know you can do hard things. It's going to be all right. That flows in your neural pathway. Someone, can you share out? Can you share out a phrase that you remember to this day, a parent sharing with you, a healthy, nourishing phrase? And it can be from Fresno, Merced, or Kern as well. Anybody. Think real quickly of a phrase a parent said to you or still says to you.
I love you.
Good. That goes in the neural pathway, and now what it is in that information highway, so even during your darkest times, you can still dip in and grab I love you. Right? What else? Give me one more. What about when you're trying something and you didn't succeed?
I actually, with the school readiness program, I was a facilitator and I was working with the...
So sorry.
As a school readiness facilitator, I was working with children 3, 4, and 5 years old. And I had the time that I was transitioning to a new position, and one of the families approached me, and I get emotional because I didn't know I was making impact. And this family, a couple, mom and dad, approached me and said, "You had impacted our lives. Thank you." I didn't know. I didn't know that I could change lives, that I have the power to bring something to these families. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. So here you have a family that says to you, you've made an impact. That is now in your neural pathway. And so when you struggle or you have times of doubt, you only need to dip in there and hear you make an impact. Right? Those are the things that are in your neural pathway, not just the things you learn, not just intellect and academia and academics and whatnot, but the things that have been said to you, they're in your neural pathway. And so here's how it changes. Here's how it changes for a person that has been traumatized. They get trauma-created neural pathways, trauma-created pathways. So information that should not have ever been in an information pathway is actually in there, and they dip into it all the time. And so things like this, I'm not okay, I'm not safe, others are dangerous, I'm unworthy, I don't deserve better, the world is unpredictable, people are unpredictable, boundaries are not respected, I shouldn't trust anyone, I can't protect myself. So you see how these thoughts, they don't have to have been said by another person to a traumatized child. It's just the cognitive message that comes along with some type of trauma. The cognitive message. You can't do something without a cognitive message or a calling card following along behind it, right? So When trauma happens, these are the things that make it into the information pathway. And so now imagine trying to make it through life. And this is what you dip into every once in a while. I'm not safe. I can't protect myself. People are unpredictable. Boundaries are not respected. Do you see how it would create a stutter step? Right? It would create whatever you're trying to succeed at, whatever you're trying to do, it creates a little stutter step. I can't go back to school. I'm not smart enough. I'm not worthy enough. I can't do this. Oh, what a crappy parent I am. I can't do this, right? And so you just dip into that trauma-created pathway, and what it does is it slows down your process. It slows down your attempts at appropriate risky behavior, taking risks and taking challenges, you know, like doing things and connecting with people and engaging. And so what we have to realize is that when you're with a child that's been traumatized, you may be trying to add to their pathway, great information, but realize it's getting squeezed in there with all of that other trauma-created pathway information. And by the way, trauma-created pathway usually comes out of 4 of the ways that implicit memory is laid down. You can always trace it back. So for instance, I can't protect myself, the very last one, the cognitive message, I can't protect myself. That comes from one of those implicit memories. Anybody remember which one? And it's okay because it was quick. Procedural. The ability, I know I can run, but I can run then. Why didn't I hit? Why didn't I yell? I can't protect myself. So that gets planted in your neural pathway, and everything that's in your neural pathway gets revisited. And it can either be things that are telling you, I love you, I got you, and you can do this, or it can be things that are cognitive messages, cognitive leftovers that you're not worthy, you're not valuable. As a matter of fact, you're expendable, and you don't have the right to have boundaries. I'll tell you what boundaries you can have. Does that make sense? So you see how the stutter step would begin? The stutter step would be created. So what we know is that the #1 way to address this is to create neural pathways. I'm going to skip this slide. I'll come back to it. Don't panic, Kern, Merced, and Fresno. Yeah, let me go here. So the way to counter it is that we have to be able to get people to leave their survival mode and get into the learning brain. And one way we can get that to happen is neural replacement behaviors, neural replacement activities. So neural replacement activities are where you're always mentioning when someone has done something well, never skipping an opportunity to give praise. I think I have the next one. Here it is, neural replacement activities. You are creating things that are predictable and valued and appreciated. So to heal the brain, a child's routine must incorporate consistent and frequent replacement exercises that do these things. If you do these things, you are healing a child. That create new patterning about safety, create new thoughts about predictability, self-awareness, confidence, and nurturing. That's your litmus test. Everything that you do and everything that you teach a foster parent, a biological parent, an adoptive parent, a teacher, everything that you do, ask yourself, are you helping to create safety, predictability, awareness, confidence, and nurturing? That's your litmus test. If you are, then you're moving forward on neural replacement activity. Because all of these things get countered in trauma. You don't think you're safe. Things are not predictable, right? Being fed, being clothed, being warmed, being held, being lovingly coddled, not predictable, right? Self-awareness. You didn't have time for self-awareness because you're in survival mode. People who are highly self-aware did not have to go into survival mode. They have the luxury and privilege of looking at themselves and becoming self-aware. Kids that are in survival mode are other people are aware. That's why they have a spidey sense. That's why when they know someone walks in the room, they don't want to be near you. You are not safe. This is not good, right? So it is a privilege to be able to focus on yourself and develop self-awareness. So when you do a neural replacement activity in the future and you help someone become self-aware, you're going back and you're attending to that which was not attended to because they were busy surviving. Right? You're busy surviving versus learning to be self-reflective, learning to be self-aware, which is why for many of us as therapists, when we have adults in the room, you're actually teaching them how to become self-aware because they never got to the privilege and opportunity to do that because they were busy making it through another day. Right? And then confidence and nurturing, which is why sometimes you can see an adult today who has had a traumatized or chronically distressed childhood, and it always is feeling like they're needing to check in with you about their worth, right? They're needing to check in with you. Hey, did you see I did this? Right? Hey, by the way, I just want you to know I made pot roast, took out the trash, I did dishwasher, I trimmed the trees. They're always looking, right? For you to go, you're worthy and you're valuable. Always looking for that. So if you have that person in your life, it can become very tiresome, right? But what you need to remind yourself, here's what you're doing. You're actually putting out the fire on the amygdala. You're putting out the fire on the amygdala, and you're letting the cortex start to come back down and adopt beliefs that I'm worthy and I'm valuable and I'm skilled and I have things to offer, right? So it's okay. Go ahead and put that in there. Don't ever call it needy. Don't ever call it needy. Call it recovering. Call it healing. Don't ever call it needy. Call it healing and recovering. Does that make sense? I still text my partner today. I say, oh, by the way, I did this. I took the kids to school. I dropped this off. And before I push send, I go, what are you doing? You're not 12 anymore. You're okay. You're safe. You're a 49-year-old woman. You're okay. So I delete the text. I don't have to send that. Does that make sense? Right. So neural replacement activities. Don't miss your opportunity. I once worked with a foster family. There's a great foster family, and they got it. I was teaching them about neural replacement activities, and the child they had in their home had just burnt down the barn. It just burnt down the whole barn. And I said, you know what? Okay, we're going to work through this. We're going to figure out how to do this. Everyone breathe. Yes, there it is. Like that. Everyone breathe. You need to breathe. And I had already been working with them on neural replacement activities, how we have to identify what praise is and build up the ego. Because if the ego is built, then the ego can handle consequences. And so trauma-informed practices does not mean ignoring that someone burnt the barn down. It means getting them to a calm place so we can sit and talk about, hey man, don't burn the barn down, here are your consequences, right? But if I come at you too quick, I'm not going to get you into a learning place. I need you to be in a learning place. Consequences are supposed to teach you, right? So I've been working with this family, helping them out, and just burnt down the barn. I arrived on the scene. Fire department's already gone. Barn still smoking in the back. A little smoke in the back. Kids up in the bathroom washing his hands, because you get dirty when you set stuff on fire. Washing his hands in the bathroom. And he knew the social worker was coming over, right? He comes down the stairs. And here's when I knew the foster mom got it. She looks up the stairs and she says, good job turning off the bathroom light. But that's beautiful. It's beautiful. She got it. And he just stopped, you know. We're still going to talk about the barn you just burnt down, right? But she got it. You have to reach in there. You have to put out the amygdala. You have to get the cortex back online. You have to allow the ego to come up, and you have to allow learning to be had. And you cannot do that when one is in survival mode, right? Does that make sense? Okay, good. But it doesn't mean ignore it. So many schools misunderstand trauma-informed because they're thinking it means to ignore it. No, it doesn't. And I'll actually have teachers that will say to me, we need to get back to good old-fashioned discipline. We need to get back to it. We need to get these kids, I'll tell these kids what to worry about, right? And so I hear them, and I gotta slow it down, and here's what I say. When we did good old-fashioned discipline without needing to, you set the amygdala on fire more than it was already on fire during their original trauma. There are better ways to do it. So you might have got that kid to buckle down and to be quiet in the moment. That's because they were scared. And eventually, after they come out of that mood state, they're going to go back to their negative emotional mood states, which are ones of unsafe, not feeling things are predictable, not feeling worthy, and then they're going to come after you in class. They're going to create havoc. So let's not add gasoline to the fire of the amygdala, right? Let's not do that. Scared straight programs don't work. You remain scared for less than 3 months' time, which is why recidivism in those programs is checked after 4 months. I can keep you in a state of fear for 3, if I'm lucky. But after that, you're not. Scared straight programs don't work. So that's why good old-fashioned so-called discipline doesn't work. Instead, we want to get to consequences, where we start to identify what is all that I have harmed in this action of burning down the barn. And then how can I make amends? How can I make amends? What can I do to attend to this thing that I've done? How can I go back to build the relations that I've harmed, right? And it has to have some benefit to the child. It has to have some benefit for the child, which is why every consequence should have a mission and a purpose that they want to be a part of, Does that make sense? Good. So healing and learning in the research, by the way, are very closely linked, As one heals and recovers, you actually see academic scores increase. You see learning happen at an easier rate. Even if it's not about academics, let's just say in your regular life. In your regular life, let's say you're trying to learn some type of task, quilt making, golf, something. If you are stressed and not healed, you will not remember the lessons that have been taught to you about quilt making or golf or whatever. You will not remember those lessons because your brain is doing all it can do to be in survival mode. And so you want to be able to calm and settle and heal and recover, and then you can see teaching go rather smoothly, and you can see learning happen with greater ease. But here's actually the amount of time that's typically dedicated to it. So healing and learning both are improved when there are building and maintaining healthy relations, right? Both of them are improved. Then the next most important and significant thing that needs to happen is teaching some general relaxation, self-regulation skills, like deep breathing and other mindfulness things. Then at the very top for healing is treatment. It's the smallest component, treatment. So keep in mind, if you are not a therapist or a clinician in this room, do not mistake that you're not doing any healing. You are. If you're building and maintaining healthy relations, and if you're teaching relaxation, general ways to regulate their mood, general things to do to help calm, you are doing healing, and then you will eventually help them learn. Does that make sense? When there are blocks and hindrances there, then treatment should be looked at and explored. So all trauma-informed means, all it means in a nutshell. When you see a kid doing some behaviors that you're not appreciative of, that you don't like, when you see those behaviors in your mind, you don't think anymore, what's wrong with you? Because that's, research shows us that's what we think. When we see behaviors we don't like, try it on 99. When you're driving down 99, go, what the hell is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Right? So we naturally think like that. All trauma-informed practices means what has happened to you. What has happened to you? That's it. And you don't ask the question out loud. You simply resolve yourself that for a child to engage in such destructive behavior, such relationship harming behavior, such anti-getting praise behavior, for a child to engage in that, something must have happened, because neurotypical, non-traumatized children, they want that oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, and they want to do the behavior over and over and over again. If you say, great job on homework, and they get a dose of it, then in their mind they're thinking, you wait till tomorrow, you see how much homework I turn in tomorrow, right? If they help clean up their sister's room, and you got a dose, you dosed them up with oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, they're thinking, you wait tomorrow, I'm gonna clean something else, mama, I don't know what, but I'm gonna clean it, right? So, wanting that dose. It is very normal and natural still to have acting out behaviors. Acting out behaviors and trauma-induced behaviors are two different things. Acting out behaviors are really trying to see, where's the fence, where's the corral in my life? How much can I bump up against it? Is it a strong fence? Is it strong structure? Is it a strong infrastructure? How much? Are there any sneaky holes I can crawl through? That's very, very normal. Trying to burn down the fence and the corral and everyone within it, including yourself, that's trauma behavior. Any difference? Okay. So, general intervention, teach breathing. This slide, I give you 3 different videos and websites to look on. You don't have to invent it. You don't have to recreate the wheel. You simply have to find a really good site. Sesame Street, by the way, great videos on all kinds of healing behaviors and practices. They just got a huge grant about 2 years ago, and it is really dedicated to trauma. Their next sessions, episodes, they're called episodes are all dedicated to some type of trauma, which is why they introduced their new character just recently, which is a foster child. Everyone see that? Fantastic, yeah, I love it. A foster child talking about their trials and tribulations being in foster care. Brand new, just introduced as of this month. So you want to be able to teach deep breathing, but be able to explain to the parent why you're teaching it. Explain to them you want the amygdala to settle down. You want the cortex to come back online because that's where all your answers are. That's the smart part of the brain. So we want the fire to go out and the cortex to come back down. That's why you teach deep breathing. So I've given you a couple of slides here, a couple of sites to check out. Then Dan Siegel. Anybody ever watch the movie Frozen? Remember that movie Frozen? Good, good. You're good people. Those of you that haven't seen it, I worry about you. All right. So Frozen, fantastic film. So in the film, one of the characters, she has these negative emotions, right? She has these emotions and she can't contain it, and she accidentally freezes people and things and whatnot, and the land and the boats and everything. She freezes everything whenever she's in a negative kind of emotional mood state. She's worried and anxious and whatnot. And so the whole song, Frozen, Let It Go, it's really, it has this chorus line where she says to herself, conceal it, don't feel it, right? But the whole movie is about how that doesn't work. The whole movie is about where Princess Anna, her sister, right? Princess Anna is like, how's that working out for you, sis? Not really well, because you're living up in a frozen castle and you froze the whole land here. Everyone's starving because you can't get the ships in to dock, right? And so it's not working out for you. And so it's not about conceal it, don't feel it. It's about name it to tame it. So neuroscientists all over the world that saw Frozen, they were like, finally, someone did it. Because the movie goes on that she has to go ahead and accept that she has these mood states, not conceal it, don't feel it, because it creates more chaos and trauma. It's actually a neuroscience theme. Dr. Dan Siegel talks extensively about this theme. I've given you a YouTube clip so you can watch him talk about it. Name it to tame it works in a lot of different ways. Name it to tame it, number one, starts to activate and cause the brain to be integrated versus disintegrated. It causes it to be integrated, and here's why. You're connecting the upstairs brain to the downstairs brain. Downstairs brains are where your feelings live. Upstairs brains give them names, label them, give them titles, right? So when you force yourself to name it, to tame it, when you name your emotion, you actually cause some settling and some calming, right? Okay. So conceal it, don't feel it, doesn't work. Name it to tame it does. And there's advanced, by the way. So general name it to tame it is just getting you to name the feeling that you're having. So lots of you have probably seen this before. This is an angry iceberg. It's really reminding us that at the top, anger is a secondary emotion. It's what came last. Primary emotions happen first, right? The bottom of the iceberg had to build up first and then give you the top. So under here, these are primary emotions. Primary emotions are what comes first. So naming it to tame it is always about naming your primary emotion, not your secondary emotion. It's easy to say you're angry. And when you tell other people they're angry, you're angry, all they can do is run, duck, hide, or fight back. But when you get into primary emotions, then everyone can take a different role. They can take a different role in how we're going to solve this. So name it to tame it is about getting to your primary emotions, the emotions that came first before the anger. And when that happens, when you can actually name, gosh, I'm feeling really rejected right now. When you can name that, what happens is the amygdala will start to settle. And the cortex is being forced to come back online because you're making these two parts of the brain talk to each other. Name it to tame it. So that's your general way. Everyone's seen a feeling chart, right? So when you have a feeling chart, you can actually use it, right? Actually prompt the adult you're working with, prompt the child you're working with. What are some of the feelings that could be going on right now, right? Because you tore up the classroom, you threw the books, you pushed Sally down, you did this, you did that. What are some of the feelings that might be going on? Could you help us out a little bit? Get in there, name it to tame it. The moment they can put a name to it, the limbic system starts to be tamed. Does it make sense? That's kind of beautiful when you think about it, right? And you try it. Next time you leave work and you're like, you're so angry, whatever happened. Remember, anger is a secondary emotion. So at that moment, name it to tame it. You really go back and you think, why am I so upset? Is it that you felt rejected? Is it that you felt taken advantage of? Is it you felt hurt? Is it felt betrayed? Is it you felt bamboozled? Anybody ever felt bamboozled at work? Yeah, right? It should be an agency name. Bamboozled. So when you name it, you'll actually start calming the limbic system, making room for the cortex to come back on. Right? So name it to tame it. So the next time your kid comes yelling at you and they're angry, just realize there's some other emotions going on. And they do not have the ability to name it yet. And so give some space, give some time. Don't take it personal. When someone's talking to you with lip flipped, don't hold that. Don't carry that. Don't pack that and carry that. Right? You need to leave that. When someone's yelling at you and taking it out on you and their lid is clearly flipped, do not pack whatever they gave you. Don't pack it, don't take it, don't carry it. Okay? This is actually Dan Siegel himself, and he's just giving us this nice little, this is what I usually share with parents. If this part of your brain, the cortex, the thinking part, if it can talk to your limbic system, it can actually model? Well, none of the neuroscience changed, just different visuals, right? So upstairs and downstairs brain. Your upstairs brain, responsible for all your thinking. Your downstairs brain, responsible for your feelings, right? Stuff one way or another. This is what I usually use for parents. It'd be great for Family Resource Center, right? So you want to engage, not enrage. But when you have parent and child arguing, both flip lids, no one's going to win. And they're both actually feeding off of each other and causing just enraging in both. And so you want to engage, not enrage. And the only way you can do that is if you get your upstairs smart part of the brain to actually hug the feelings in the limbic system. You need it to come down, so you got to find something that helps you get that down. And we talked about some of the things you all listed earlier: crafts, whatnot, music, running, me slow walking. So figure out how to get that down. So really teaching parents how to move in there and then engage versus enrage. Another intervention that you want to teach children that you're working with: feelings come and go. They come and go. So whatever emotions and feelings are happening, they do not stay with us forever. They're not built like that. Those of you that have had the happiness trap with me, you can remember, feelings are not built to last forever. And we can prove it right here, right now. How many of you have ever felt disappointed? Yeah, good. Did it stay with you consistently? No, feelings don't work like that. How many of you have ever felt betrayed at any time in your life? Did it stay with you consistently? Flip it. How many of you ever felt happy or joy? Did it stay with you consistently? Damn it. No, it didn't. Because feelings are not built to last. They simply are not built to last. They come, they will peak and crest, and then they will dissipate. What you have to do is you have to figure out how not to make any choices and any decisions while your feelings are cresting. Don't make your decision up here. You need to just settle and wait. They will peak, and then they will lessen. The decisions you make when you're in a negative emotional mood state usually are awful decisions. That's when the kids that we're working with make the decision to hurt themselves, make the decision to end their life, make the decision to end someone else's life, make the decision to try that drug, right? Does that make sense? So get them the knowledge that emotions are not built to last. And in reality, typical emotions that are related to any type of addictive behavior peaks in 15 minutes. That means the coping skill you must teach must be good for at least 15 minutes. 15 minutes, good rule of thumb. Make sense? Okay. Disappointment. So to tie this back to external and internal triggers, when an individual feels disappointed, and it could be factual disappointment, oh, I failed this test, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. When they feel disappointment, or that they let someone else down and disappointment is being thrust upon them, when they feel it, it actually activates the cortisol system. It activates it, and they know they're not in any threat, but the body is responding as if they are in threat. That comes from our evolutionary makeup, by the way, where to disappoint, if we were a tribe, right, and we were trying to survive cave woman, caveman days, and I disappointed the tribe, and they said, away with you, Jen, that's a death sentence. It's a death sentence. So that's one of the things that are left over in our evolutionary makeup. So if I feel disappointed, I give myself an emotional death sentence, and it kicks off the entire system. So keep in mind, if you have a loved one that has done something and sparked a little disappointment, give them a little bit of sacred safe space for you to help de-escalate that and bring that down, because it's not just disappointment, I failed a test. If they've been traumatized in the past, I failed a test, I'm a loser, I'm not valuable, I'm not worthy, I don't even know why I'm here, right? So disappointment activates the same cortisol system, the same releases, okay? So put that in perspective. And that just means that what we're gonna do is those 6 out of 10 kids, when disappointment comes, because life is full of disappointments, right? When disappointment comes, what that means is that us, the buffers and the protective factors, need to be in there teaching ways to healthily handle disappointment. It's not that you say, oh, you got a D, but I know your history, so let me give you an A. It's not what it is. You got a D, but we got this. We can figure this out together. We can figure this out together. Does that make sense? You be the protective factor. Be with them when you see disappointment coming down the hallway. You stay with that 6 out of 10. You stay with that kid. Don't let them handle that disappointment alone. Cortisol system will fire up, and you'll have a kid that's experiencing more than just disappointment in the moment. Okay? So some little helpers. You always don't have to be the one to calm everyone down. Here are some free apps you can put on your phone. You got the Calm app. The Calm app is free up to a certain point, meaning like if you want some advanced calming sessions, then you pay for that. But before you get there, you have all kinds of free stuff on Calm app. And then you have Insight Timer. It's another free app. And again, runs the same way. I think it only has like 1,500 free sessions. After 1,500 free sessions, then you might have to pay. So have these things available. If you're working with junior high kids or adolescent kids, they already have a phone, don't know how to use it well. It's the first domestic violent relationship they've ever been in, right? Because they're not pulling it out, checking it to go, oh, my friends are telling me I have great hair. No, they're pulling it out and rereading all the fights they had with their friend at cafeteria time. It's called lunchtime, not cafeteria time, but reading this, right? So it's the first DV relationship they've ever been in, right? They're only pulling it out to see how I'm not matching up, how I don't have enough likes, how I'm not connected, how everyone else on Instagram got invited, why am I not there? Why are they taking a picture of food and I'm actually here at home eating? What is this about, right? So it's an awful relationship, very first domestic violent relationship that they've been in. So we need to teach them how to use the phone in a healthy, nurturing, relational way, which is have a Calm app, have an Insight app put on there so that you can play through when you're in your times of stress, so that you can be reminded how significant and how important and how valuable you are, right? So you don't always have to be around, and you shouldn't always be around. Protective factors shouldn't always be around. You need to come in a person's life, and then you need to let them build up their coping skills. You need to come in a person's life, and then you need to let them build up their coping skills. And being able to put something healthy on their phone and use it in a healthy way is a coping skill. Does it make sense? All right. I'm going to finish on this slide due to time. How's that? Does that work, Lori? Mm-hmm. All right. So this research comes from Kristen Neff, if you're ever interested. Kristen Neff, N-E-F-F. So she's done an enormous amount of research on self-compassion, which is really hitting the scene right now. And it has been here for a while, but it's really hitting the scene right now because we can tie it to traumatized populations specifically. So for instance, if you have a veteran that has experienced some considerable trauma, if they rank higher in self-compassion skills, they actually heal at a higher rate. Think about that. Now what we're doing is we're realizing the same is panning out for children. If they have trauma on the scene and we teach them self-compassion, they actually heal at a faster and higher rate. That's what we want, right? So 3 areas of self-compassion, because self-compassion is kind of one of those buzzwords. You ever know that sometimes there's a buzzword out there and people throw it out, but no one knows what it means? Like conflict resolution. I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed throughout the years and are like, if there's a problem at work, what would you do? They're like, conflict resolution. And I asked, what would that entail? I don't know, resolving conflict. Right? So you pass out buzzwords all the time. So what you want to do is dig a little deeper. So here's self-compassion split up in 3 segments for you. Really simple, really quick. The first one, mindfulness. Mindfulness, neuroscience-wise, actually exercises this part of the brain out, right here. This is the prefrontal cortex. So here's our cortex. 4 fingers represent our smart part of the brain. But right here, these fingernail areas, that's your PFC, your prefrontal cortex. And what we know is that when an individual practices mindfulness and engages in mindfulness, it is like taking this out to the gym. Why is that so important? Because then when this gets activated, this has a stronger and more capable chance of coming down and becoming integrated again. So practicing true mindfulness, which is different than meditation. True mindfulness is the ability to really look at something, look at it without posing judgment. Look at yourself without posing judgment. Look at your decision and choice you just made without posing judgment so that you can get into problem solving. You can get going and figure out, wow, I made this choice, what do I do now? So it's about being present with yourself, with the world, with others, without judgment. And then we can move quicker into problem solving. So when one practices mindfulness, it is exercising the part of the brain that we need to be the strongest. Does it make sense? Good. The second part, self-kindness. So being supportive and figuring out a way to talk to yourself. With kids, this is a really easy way to do it. You get them together, you do a little group, and you give an example. You say, what's your name? Nicole. You say, Nicole, so Nicole made a mistake out on the playground today. You know, she was kind of impatient and kind of pushing people over. And so, you know, she's trying to figure out how to go back and how to talk to those kids and make amends and whatnot. What other suggestions do you have? The moment you ask a kid that, they're going to tell Nicole all kinds of kindness things. You know what? We all make mistakes, Nicole. You know what? Keeping your hands to yourself is so much better, Nicole. Right? So they're going to say all kinds of things that are accurate and factual. It's rare that you get a kid that says you should beat yourself to death with that. The fact that you messed up, just pummel yourself to death. Ruin your ego. Decimate yourself. End it. Kids don't do that. Kids don't do that at all. Kids talk about make mistakes. It's all right. We'll figure this out. I'll go with you if you want to talk to those kids you push down, right? They're all in that problem solving, whatnot. That's how you check for self-kindness. We lose it when we grow into adulthood because every time you messed up, how do you talk to yourself? Right? Whoever messed up this morning, I know some of you, just probability speaking, statistically speaking, there's enough of you in here. Some of you messed up. You either messed up with your spouse, you messed up with your kids, fighting and getting into school on time. You messed up being rude to a Starbucks person. Some of you messed up. You gave someone the one finger salute on 99. Someone in this room had a mess up this morning. When you think about it, here's what we usually do. Research proves it. Oh, such an idiot. Oh, I'm so impatient. Where does that come from? Oh, God, why am I like that? Right? And you replay it over and over and over, and you let that event dig at you. You replay, gosh, I wish I hadn't snapped at my kid. She's just trying to get her shoelaces. By the way, research also shows your kid's already at daycare, then forgot about it. You're the one perseverating and ruminating and dwelling on it, playing it over and over, but your kid's already playing. They're already over it. So as parents, you tend to beat yourself up quite a bit. So what you have to remind yourself is where's the self-kindness? The moment you can speak to yourself factually and kind, factually, because factually is, yes, I did mess up. I should have never talked to the Starbucks person like that. Soy milk is okay, I guess. Whatever, right? Whatever the mess up was. So you want to be able to go back, state it factually in your mind, factually, but then kindly. How are you talking to yourself? So self-compassion is checking how you speak to yourself. And then the very last component is actually related to our evolutionary makeup that I've talked quite a bit about. It's this need for connectedness, right? But connectedness even during times of struggle. The moment we mess up, the moment that something negative happens to us, we often go, why me? Why does this always happen to me? So you're walking out of Starbucks and you spill coffee and you're like, are you serious? Why does this always happen to me? Connectedness in regards to self-compassion is this. Do you think you're the only person to have spilled coffee? No, you're not. You get in a fender bender, you slam on the wheel. Why does this always happen to me? Why do things like this always happen to me? What you're doing is you're kicking yourself out of the emotional tribe. You're separating yourself. It's harder to heal when you're on the outside. So you quickly remind yourself, no, other people too have had a fender bender. It doesn't mean compare traumas, by the way. It's not about comparing traumas. Marital discord. Research shows that when people are having marital discord, you have the two partners go off, and then they're like, why is my marriage falling apart? 67% of marriages are falling apart, not just your marriage, right? Connectedness is about remembering, I struggle, oh my gosh, you struggle somehow too. You struggle somehow too. You struggle somehow too. It's not about comparing. It's not about me saying what I've been through is worse than what you've been through. Struggle, 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 struggle. The moment you do that, you've just been emotionally brought back into the tribe and you don't feel alone. Because remember, in our evolutionary makeup, to mess up would mean to be ostracized and isolated and kicked out. That's why it activates every time you have a mess up, every time you have a mistake, it activates that button that is left over from our evolution, which is, why is this only happening to me? It's going to be a death sentence, right? But again, we don't live in tribes anymore, so it's an emotional death sentence. So connectedness is about, we all struggle. I don't know what yours is, and I hope things work out. I know what mine is, and I'm going to be working on it. Thank you.
Yay.
Carrie, do we have any questions online? Anyone like to be unmuted so they can?
I was waving at the camera, sorry, not you, but I'll wave to you too.
Anybody in the room have questions they would like to ask? We're shy today.
I think she covered it pretty well. She's pretty thorough.
I loved your.
I think Jamie is standing up.
Okay, Jen, I loved your idea about remembering that people care about you when you're having a low day. something I do as an adult, as a professional, is I keep what I call my love notes. So when a client, a client or a person in a training or someone writes me an email that says, thank you so much, I really appreciate your, whatever it was that I did that they appreciated. And so I keep literally a love note file. So I can go back, if I'm having a low day, I can go in there and go, oh, look, somebody liked me once, I'm having a bad day today.
That's perfect,
Yeah.
yes. Rick Hansen talks about that quite a bit in his book called Rewiring for Happiness. And again, making the clear statement, you're not always in a state of happiness. But what we can do is we can do little things that remind us of moments when it all went well. And what it does is it helps us be connected emotionally, once again, to the larger tribe of society or our family or whatnot. So, yeah.
Great. I think we have a question from Kern County.
We do, Shane. So we're wondering, are you ready? We're wondering, are there good courses for youth ages 14 to 24 to teach the consequential thinking skills?
I'm so sorry.
Consequential thinking skills for 14. What was that age again, Jamie? 14 to?
24.
24. Thank you.
Courses.
So not any courses that I can think of, but however, if you're asking from a clinical perspective, if you go to your Jongsma treatment planners, Jongsma is spelled Jongsma. His name is Arthur Jongsma. And in his treatment planners, he embeds consequential thinking. Consequential thinking is typically tied to all of the titles of his books that are about ADHD, impulsivity, anxiety, and trauma reactionary behaviors. So that would be Jongsma treatment planners. Oh, and if I may, one more time.
Yeah.
There is a website called Kids in the House. Kids in the House. So if you open up Kids in the House, it even speaks to adolescents. So it's a misidentified title. Kids in the House. If you open up that website, up at the scroll bar, you're going to see experts. If you click on experts, you're going to see pictures with names. Dan Siegel will be on there, other experts as well. And consequential thinking is usually taught during 10, 11, 12, 13 years of age. So if you click on an expert that is all about working with 10 to 13-year-olds, 10 to 14-year-olds, you're going to see some consequential thinking from there. If you click on Dan Siegel's work, you'll find some consequential thinking, but you'll find a lot of other things as well. The thing that Kids in the House do so well is they break every video up to about 3 minutes and 50 seconds, knowing that the average capacity, the ability to pay attention is slipping away with social media. And so it gives you a little dose, and then you can learn from it and then go to the next one. Kids in the House. Okay.
Monica, any questions from y'all in Merced? You're just happy in Merced today. Awesome. How about Iris? Anything in Fresno at CYS, Comprehensive Youth Services? No, they're all good. Thumbs up. Okay, great. All right.
Okay.
Shane, actually, I have.
Oh, well, I suppose we'll let our facilitator have a question. Yes.
Jen, just because I think this is something that many people have dealt with. So you talked about having that parent and that child in the room together, both angry, both experiencing, maybe you're not sure yet what that primary emotion is. How would you go, what would you do next?
So typically, if I have two angry family members in a room, I ask them, can you hear anything with flipped lids? So I would have already been working with them. If I was already working with them, I've already described a little bit of neuroscience. And just letting them know, I can't hear you when you have a flipped lid. You're going to say things you can't take back when you have a flipped lid. You can't make sense out of things when you have a flipped lid. So even if you have a good point, even if you're making a good point, it cannot be received if the other person's lid is flipped. And so the session at that moment would all be about breathing, bringing it back down, and they must exchange one word of kindness internally to themselves before we proceed. So it's really about a grounding technique, a settling technique. That's where I would do it. Yeah. And it's easier if you've had that teaching done ahead of time. Now luckily I'm able to have some posters in the room that kind of reiterate what a flip lid is. I can reference it rather quickly. If they're brand new, I don't go into too much neuroscience, and all I let them know is, I'm having trouble accepting both of you. I'm having trouble accepting both of you, so I'm not sure how either one of you can accept anything that's said to each other. So let's just take a moment and breathe, because there's so much to be accepted of both of you, and I want to get there. Right? So.
Anybody else have any questions? Any
Nothing online?
Anybody online, Karen?
I asked, but nobody is typing anything, so.
Yes. Wow, we all have it then. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Jen. And because we have been asked, and I want to make sure that we're going to make sure that you all get Jen's presentation and slides, so we'll make sure that you have access to those. We will be sending out an email link to everybody on the list. And also, many of you, if you're on our mailing list, you have received an e-newsletter from us for the Valley Learning Community, and we're going to send out that again, probably in a couple weeks or so. But we'll embed the presentation in that as well, make sure that you have another pathway to have access to it. So you will be able to keep this great resource with you and reflect on it and use it in your work. So again, just want to offer appreciation to Jen for joining us this morning. And we are going to take a break right now for lunch. We have a half an hour allotted for that. So it is 12:20-ish. So if we could come back by 12:50, we will, what we're going to do in the afternoon is really spend some time reflecting and having some dialogue about what we just heard, which is a lot. So we're going to begin to digest that and see what pieces and parts we can take from that to use moving forward in our work with children and families. So that's what's coming up next. But let's take a break, and then we'll come back at 12:50 and begin again. Thanks.
Stop recording.
All right, welcome back. Hope you had a good chance to get some snacks, take a little break. We're actually going to move into our discussion now. So.
Which slider do you want?
We are on, there you go. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to get into probably about 4 or 5 people at each table. So if you're at a table where there's only 1 or 2 of you, if you can join one of these middle tables. And for our remote sites, if you can get into groups of about 4 or 5. And what we're going to do is in your groups, you will discuss the first question. And the question is, what's emerging for you and what did you hear? So after this morning's presentation, really what has come alive for you? And so we're going to give you a couple minutes in your groups to talk about this question with each other, and then we'll signal time, and we'll have half of you stand up and rotate to a new table, and then you will talk about the second question. We'll have about 10 minutes.
Okay, so 10 minutes?
Yes.
All right. Ready, go.
I have that same color.
Do you? Yes. Doesn't matter, just get to a different table. Join a new table. So after you switch tables, you should have a table with new folks there. Introduce yourselves if you haven't already, and talk about the second question. So the second question is, what would it take to create change on this issue? So you can think about in different settings, if you work in schools, if you work in family resource centers, what would it take to create change around the issue that we discussed this morning? And we'll give you about
10 minutes. So maybe if you haven't moved, you can move this time. And join a new table. And your last question is, how can we stay connected and share what works to build resilience? So how can we stay connected and share what works? So go ahead and move to a new table. You have about 7 minutes, and then we'll come back to the large group.
All right, everybody, I am I'm going to invite you back to the fold. I'm going to invite you back to the fold here. Thank you all. All right, what we're going to do now, for all of our hub sites and for here, we're going to spend just a few minutes reporting out separately. So hub sites, you all will report out on your own first. We'll do that here, and what we'd like to hear are some common themes, what was really alive for you. You all had the chance to mix up in different tables and hear different voices, and so we're really interested in kind of hearing what came up, what bubbled up from what you learned and the conversations that you had. So what we're going to do is take some time to do that now, and remote sites, you'll have somebody kind of charting out some of those themes. We'll do the same thing here, and then we'll come back and we'll report out by site, and we'll get to hear what everybody's reflections on what they learned and what they heard. So, all right, so we'll start that process now, and then remote sites will bring you back in probably a little less than 10 minutes, probably like about 8 minutes.
So how do I make sure that the remote sites aren't hearing what now it's going to hear? Yeah, that's a good.
Well, they can mute us too.
All right, so
If they can hear.
let's start with the first question, which was very simply, what was alive for you? What did you hear? What emerged from you? Jen shared a lot of stuff. I know that. All really, really interesting and powerful. Gave us a lot to think about. So as you, in your table conversation, how'd you break that down? What came up for you? Our Jen over here is going to start some stuff.
The other Jen.
Other Jen. Jen's going to eat some snacks back there. So anybody, just feel free. What came up?
6 out of 10 have a background in trauma.
Say that again?
6 out of 10.
That number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More than half.
More than half.
Yeah.
I was surprised by that. I mean, I've been in the field for a long time too, and to think about that in every circumstance is not something I've ever done. So it was great. Thank you. What else?
Just breaking down all the different chemicals in the brain. I always heard that term, it has a chemical imbalance. I'm just like, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah, so now I know what that means. And how to just be gentle with it, basically. Just be, mindful, which I always was, but now I have a better understanding and probably.
Okay, who do you want to talk to first?
Let's go Bakersfield. Okay. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Lori.
Are you guys ready to share out some of your thoughts, ideas, what came up?
Absolutely. So on in terms of what's emerging for us and what did we hear, we left understanding that triggers aren't always known. A little surprised to know that 6 out of 10 experience trauma. And then we enjoyed learning about the different types of stress and their benefits. That's a different way of thinking about stress. And then we liked learning about the neurotypical versus the non-neurotypical.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. We talked about a lot of those same things too. We had a lot of conversation about 6 out of 10 experiencing trauma. Anything else?
Not for question 1. Do you want to, are we going to circle back to 2 and 3?
Let's just let's go through 2 and 3.
Okay, so in terms of what we think it would take to create change on this issue, more awareness. Certainly collaboration and community outreach are key. Trainings and continued education are good strategies. Psychoeducation for non-clinical personnel and the public in general. Identifying cultural barriers is important, like language barriers, and then have a trauma-informed approach. So consistently using empathy, understanding, and rapport.
That's awesome. Great feedback. Great reflection there. And then how can we stay connected and share what works?
So we like the idea of doing community outreach, continually networking, collaboration. This is another way that collaboration is so important. And then also, following up with our clients, that whole continuity of care, thinking outside those sometimes where we think, well, our job's done, it might not really be, we could do more. And then openness and transparency, a desire to continue to learn.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Kurt. Anything else?
I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, let's go to Monica. Monica?
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. So I hear our feedback, but that's all right. So what's emerging for us is we're learning how to explain to resource parents how to understand trauma. And then what would it take to create change? We really want to educate school district staff at all levels. And we want to find someone who's influential, who will listen to us and champion our mission. And how can we stay connected? Well, we all want to keep participating next year in the next round of Valley Learning Community.
Yes.
Good answer. Good answer.
Good answer. That's great. We have a lot of conversation too about schools and the important role they play in our community and educating about, what we heard today, just as other professionals in the family strengthening field. So that's great. Thank you. Thanks, Monica. Iris, how about you all in Fresno?
Hi, this is Iris. So for the first question, what did we hear? One of the things that, for all of us is that we wanted to talk about was regarding adolescents, how they have the highest amount of dopamine, which tends to be through addiction. So our agency does focus a lot or works with a lot of teenagers and parents. So that's one thing that we're talking about. Stood up to us. The second, what would it take to create change on this issue? We wrote different techniques. Some of them was, education, bringing awareness, creating, feeling charts, creating calming lists, not mislabeling, and also increasing the support systems within families. How we stayed connected and share what works. Understanding culture, we put follow up with interventions, social media, creating positive what was it? Frost and what? Report, sorry. So that was a couple of things that we talked about here in Fresno.
Awesome.
I like that mislabeling thing. That seems, yeah, I haven't heard that point before.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. We'll share out a little bit of some of what we talked about. Where is what we talked about? We're losing our charts, but we, like you all, we reflected, and as Jamie started out talking about the fact, the understanding that 6 out of 10 have experienced trauma, so that was really significant. Really learning more about the chemicals in the brain and understanding how those work, that can work for good or how they work for someone who's experiencing trauma. And that, I mean, I think for a lot of people, that was a real significant learning and understanding something very new. We talked a lot about how important it is to have self-compassion in the work that we do, and that can be really, we're all challenged by that at times, but it's very important for us to practice it so we can help model it for our parents and children. What would it take to create change? We had lots of conversations about, as I mentioned before, just trying to share information, whether it's in the schools or having some intentional opportunities to have conversations about what we learned today and the importance of trying to shift the understanding that people have about kids who appear to be acting out, but really have experiences of trauma and the whole, you know, it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. So that was significant. And then we talked about staying together, maybe perhaps figuring out a way to continue to work on this issue as a collaborative group. So whether that could take, we could have people regionally that might be interested in, you know, forming a group so that we can move this forward. We're really interested in, you know, exploring this in the next year too, so that we can, because this is a lot to digest today, a lot. And I know Jen has some groupies in the crowd who have heard her before, and they're like back again. It's like, yes, you know, I think you learn something new every time, right? So anyway, we have deep appreciation for that, and we know learning happens over time. And so what we really hope is we can keep people connected in a way that's meaningful, and so that when you go back to do what you do with your families, with your children, that this is something that is helpful for you in your work. So, so we really appreciate the time that you all took to break these down and begin to talk about it and digest it, because we want to move on that as we go forward. So, do you want to at the end, or?
It doesn't matter. I can do it now. I need the mic probably too. Thank you. Hello. Hi, so I'm just going to take a minute to thank, for this is the 4th of our series of learning communities for this fiscal year. And I just want to take a second to thank Lori and Jennifer for all their hard work on all the events that we had this year. I think we had a really good series, really good speakers. And I know we're going to come into this next fall as well and learn even more. So I just want to thank you both. We got you 2 different books, so you can have your own little book club. So, you know, I'm not sure which one's for which. I figured, you know, we'd get you two books from the same author, so you could kind of, you could share them, and maybe you'll share them with us next year. But I just want to say thank you on behalf of all of and I want to thank Monica and Jamie and her crew, and Iris and the folks at CYS as well, and all of you that came online this year. We really appreciate all the time that you spent with Strategies 2.0 and with Lori and Jennifer and I. So thank you. And Carrie as well DJ Bubba back here at the, back behind the mic. Yeah, I'll turn the camera on for just a second. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
All right, so as we mentioned before, a couple things before you go, just to know. We will be, if you should be on our emailing list. You want to be on our list because for the Valley Learning community, we are sending out e-newsletters. So what we're trying to do is to keep people connected in between the times that we're not together here in the learning community. So we'll provide a summary of what happened today. As I said before, we're going to embed Jen's presentation into our e-newsletter. We'll also have another link for it available for everyone who came today. And then Strategies is also going to provide us with a link to their YouTube channel. There's a lot going on here, so there's lots of ways to get the information, I guess is my point. So if you have colleagues that wanted to come today and they didn't make it, we all know that comes up, they can go to the YouTube channel and this will be uploaded there and they can watch the whole presentation. So that is just a really awesome resource. Or if you just want to go back again like me, it's a lot of information at once. I know there are things I want to go back and listen to again.
I'll speak into you.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. I got it clicked on there. Pretty good.
So not only this presentation, but the past presentations, the presentations that are going on throughout the state, because there's 6 different regions that are holding learning communities. So all of their things are on the YouTube channel. All of the webinars that we do throughout the state are on the YouTube channel. You'll hear my lovely voice facilitating the webinars. I don't give the webinars, I just facilitate the webinars. So there's just so much great information and so much great work going on throughout the state. And we're excited about being on YouTube. Yay! Woo! And maybe even a makeup tutorial here and there. I also, we didn't really have time to get into them today, but you all have handouts. One is, there's a handout for you that explores a little bit more as a tip sheet about the social and emotional development of children. So you want to check that out from our partners at CSSP, who really created the Strengthening Families Framework. So that is yours to take with you. And then we have a knowledge to action tip sheet that also gives you some specific tools that you can look at in your work. And one of the things they talked about was this curriculum that the Devereaux agency created called Flip It, which to me was interesting because it's the same, it's the same terminology that we just learned about in terms of flipping our lid. So please check that out and take those with you. And then finally, I just want to invite you all to fill out your evaluation. It's our way of getting feedback. We really appreciate it. We've narrowed it down to 1 page only, so it's not even 2 sides that you need to fill out. So please take the time to do that now, and then continue to look forward to our emails and emails from Strategies. They're going to continue to have trainings in your area that you will be interested in and want to sign up for. So thank you all again, and have a great Friday. And thank you. Thanks, Laura.